and welcome to another Marcia Week Show coming to you from the island of Barbados on this Monday, July the 7th. CARICOM Day, I understand today is. And what a joy it is for us to welcome you here again. Uh, Seventh month of the year, believe it or not, the time is flying so very quickly, and we are coming so quickly to the, I have to say, to the end of the year. And I want to be so thankful to Almighty God for keeping us so safe and keeping us so well up until this point, in spite of the challenges as a nation that we have faced. And I also want to be concerned about the season that we're entering into. Now, it's traditionally called the hurricane season. I've heard a lot of predictions, and I still believe that God sits upon the circle of the earth and controls matters and controls things, and that very often we are going to be able to talk with him and petition him and approach him so that we can certainly have our island preserved. We are seeing a lot of things happening around the world, and we can see what's happening in Texas. I was listening to the Brass Tacks program today and some issues that were raised, and I am going to be dealing with some issues this evening, particularly surrounding the church and the call on our Prime Minister. And I'm not going to be pulling any punches this evening. I think some people might just say scorch earth, but I am going to go straight for the jugular this evening. I'm not going to be pulling punches on the matters that I feel very strongly to address today, and are going to come to it from a bit of a different direction. So let me take this opportunity to welcome all of you that are joining us tonight from the loyal opposition, loyal sons and daughters all. As Rose often says, we are committed to our country and to our flag. And so we are happy to have you with us. Taroni, it's always a pleasure to have you, and thank you for your kind words. We appreciate you so very much and all that you bring to the platform. Monica, good evening to you. Judy Jilts as well. Esther Blue. And Marcia Miller, nice to have you with us again. There's Marcia. She's going to keep me on my toes. I know we're just about 164, Marcia. So I still have a little more to go before I'm compelled to do that national anthem. Queen D, good evening to you as well. Anthony Smith from Brooklyn, we appreciate you joining us tonight from, I would say, the diaspora, and look forward to you sharing with the others. And incidentally, folk, remember, when you're on YouTube, to share so that we can get a bit of a preference when it comes to the matters of availability when people are searching for certain information on YouTube. Mr. Smith, so thank you so much, Anthony, for doing that. Queen D, great to have you. Of course, Alfred Benjamin, you're always locked on from Brooklyn, New York. A pleasure to have you with us again tonight. And Joyanne Faith, thank you for being here, Shirley. And we are at 201. Laurie Bob, thank you for being here as well. And Cami, good night to you as well. ADG, good night to you. Good to have you with us. Mavis, Lashley, a real joy to have all of you with us. Well, we're at 217, and I'm going to get Dave to just kick the show off this evening with that national anthem and the national pledge. So, Dave, over to you, my friend. Amen, amen, amen. That's what I have to say at the end of that national anthem. It's always great to, when you travel and when you're in any other part of the world, to hear two things, or to engage two things. One is to hear our national anthem, and secondly, to see our national flag. And so I want to thank you so very much. I saw someone locked on tonight, Johnny Lambie from Dominica. Pleasure to have you joining us from Dominica. We'll be in touch and hearing more later in the show tonight. Now, let me go to the national pledge first. I'm anxious to get into what I want to talk to you about this evening. So let me go to the national pledge first of all, and let us make a commitment to our country and to our flag. I pledge allegiance to my country, Barbados, and to my flag, to uphold and defend their honor, and by my living to do credit to my nation wherever I go. Thank you so very much, Dave, for the help that you've given as we engage the process this evening. Forgive me for that background noise. We have somebody with some crazy car just going by quite frequently, and I trust it doesn't interrupt us too much tonight. Now, I've been listening quite carefully to a bit of the Brass Tacks program today, and I've heard a lot about the church. And you would expect with me as a Christian minister to address some of these areas that I've been hearing today. And first of all, before I even get into the aspect of how the church can contribute to the entire process that we are facing today, because we did have a call on the program, or there was a call on the program today with David Ellis, and someone talked about the work their church was doing. And we listened to what David was asking him. And fundamentally, what David was asking him is, if the church is doing work in the context of the the community, what does it look like? How do you engage it? And and for some reason, he didn't seem to be able to put that together. And so I do want to touch on some feelings I have with regards to that, and some very strong ones, and a word to the church with regards to how it needs to change its operational processes to be able to impact and affect its community. But first of all, let me, as a minister, go to a portion of scripture, first of all, that I want to share, because the things that are happening in our country are not by accident. These things are happening because we have created an open forum, an open door, so to speak, for elements within the realm of the spirit to impact and affect our country. And I want to be very specific. There was a time in the history of Israel when Prophet Elijah was alive, and there was some issues going on in Israel, and the king at the time was Ahab, and he accused Elijah of being the person who troubled the nation. And Elijah bounced right back. And I want to bounce right back this evening, sorry, because we have to understand that when things impact a nation, when things are happening around us, it begins at the head and it flows down. Psalm 33, that is where the perspective of the oil flowing down from down Abraham's uh, gown goes to his hem. And we want to be clear on this. So Elijah makes this statement. He says, I have not made trouble for Israel. You and your father's family caused all the problems when you stopped obeying the Lord's commands and began following false gods. We saw a significant shift in the atmosphere of this country when our national flag was taken to Ghana and buried in a grave with some bones of a Ghanaian national that were located here in Barbados. Now, I have no problems with the bones being buried. I have a significant problem with the flag being buried, because what you have done in the act of burying the flag is that you have given credence to entities out of the area of which we speak to travel across a portal of this of the Atlantic Ocean, which was incidentally the Middle Passage, bringing slaves from Africa to the Caribbean, and interfere with the processes here in our country of Barbados. It was a spiritual act that the Prime Minister performed. It was not a political one. It was not an economic one. It was not a tourism one. It was a spiritual act that she performed. And when that flag was lowered into the earth, it desecrated everything to do with this country. That is proven by our national pledge. I pledge allegiance to my country, Barbados, and to what? My flag. The flag is never supposed to touch the ground. As a matter of fact, if you were to follow a lot of the matters to do with flags, flags that were buried were generally buried for a significant reason. And that reason was more or less because that era or something of that nature came to an end. And I don't have the time to go into all of it this evening. But generally, even with the corpse, and if you want to call it with the bones of an individual, the flag that you would have seen, for example, when they're burying an American soldier that has been killed in battle, they will take the flag off of the coffin, they will fold it meticulously, and they will hand it out to the family of the fallen soldier. Apart from that, the flag must never touch the ground. I've seen some comments treating to the matter of our flag being desecrated as an unlawful act that should have punishable consequences. Now, I'm doing a bit of research to confirm that, but if there's anybody here that can do that tonight, please do it and let me know for sure. Because if that's the case, what we're dealing with in Barbados are two standards of justice. One standard for persons at a higher level of society and another standard for persons at a lower level of society. And these are things that seriously displease God. Now, not only was that action by Elijah to Ahab an important aspect where Elijah says, you're the person who's troubling Israel, and I am going to say today, Mia Mottley, you are the person troubling this country. You are the person, you are the head of state, you are the king or the queen, so to speak, the prime minister of this country. You're the head, the leading authority of this country. And just as Elijah said to Ahab, I say to you tonight, without any unequivocal apology, you are the person troubling this country. Having said that, how do we get our nation back to where it ought to be? I have heard of calls made to the church. I've heard the Prime Minister make calls to the church. Ma'am, please, as an exercise, read 2 Chronicles chapter 29 and see that it took a network, it took an agreement with the king, Hezekiah, and the priests of the temple to come together to create an environment that would have restored the presence of God in the nation of Israel. In other words, ma'am, it is required for you not just to tell the church or to ask the church what it can do. It is required of you to come together with the church, and in doing so, there is a significant amount that you must repent of. You know, there was a time in David's life when David took advantage of a man by the name of Uriah. He saw his wife Bathsheba, and he sent Uriah to the head of the war. In the war that he was having at the time, he sent Uriah to the head. He sent Uriah to the head and had him killed because he had slept with his wife Bathsheba. And he thought everything would have gone along very well and easy. Just like you, Madam Prime Minister, think because you buried our flag in Ghana that everything is going to go along hunky-dory. Well, Nathan Ferdinand is here. Nathan Ferdinand is here to tell you that you need to repent. That is what is needed of you, ma'am. That is the responsibility of the leader. That is what Nathan said to David. When he went into David and he told David the story about the rich man and so on and so forth, and David got exceptionally upset. And he said, tell me who that man is, and I'm going to deal with him. And Nathan did not hesitate. He said, you are the man. I say to you this evening, Madam Prime Minister, with all due respect to the office that you carry, you are the person who troubles this nation. You are the person who has brought the calamity that our nation faces in the context of crime and violence. You are the head of state. And as the head goes, the old people used to say, so does the body. And so to correct things in this country, it's not just going to take the church. It's going to require of you, ma'am, to come to a place of agreement where you are going to have to join with the church, not ask the church for information, ask the church for help. You have created the environment. You have caused what is happening in our country. You are the head of state. It is required of you to position yourself so that Barbados can again be at peace. There's a song in the air of this country that needs to be removed. There is a cloud that hangs over this nation that needs to be removed. And while the church is praying, and we believe in the power of prayer, and we know that God can do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, there is a synergy also required between the king and the priest. Let me move on now quickly to talk to the church, because I have a bit of a tongue lashing for the church. And the reason I say that is because you continue to act like a madman. And I'm speaking to the church in this country. You continue to act as if you are insane. That is, you're doing the same thing, the same way, and expecting different results. The church needs to deploy the army that sits in front of it every Sunday. I want to remind you that church is not an assembly. Church is not a denomination. It is a people. And we as ministers have a significant responsibility to empower those people so that they can go forth from our assemblies and be the light of the world, to be the salt of the earth, and to bring resolution where they are at. When the baptism of the Holy Spirit was given on the day of Pentecost, of course, it wasn't given to make churches have a good time and for people to come into church and sing and praise and all of that. Yes, that is important. We understand that. But God was clear when he said, you will be my witnesses. And anyone with a legal mind knows that a witness can only testify to what they have experienced. You cannot testify simply to a head knowledge. You cannot testify simply to the theory. You have to testify to the actuality of your experience. If you were not present, if you did not experience it, it is not accepted as evidence. It is known as hearsay. And so it is time for the church, I will put it, to stop the nonsense. Deploy the army that sits in front of you. Empower them. Show them how to be the church in their offices, at the pump of the gas station where they serve people, in the line at the cashier in the supermarket, at the bank teller window. Show them how to be marketplace ministers so that the kingdom of God, so that the presence of God can be experienced across this country. This is critically important for us to be able to deploy the army, deploy the soldiers into battle so that they can be witnesses and tell of what the Lord has done in their lives and bring about experience in the lives of others. There are many who know the Lord today who were criminally involved, who were of the criminal element, who were involved in drugs, who were involved in gangs, who have come to the Lord. Why do we not empower them and deploy them? And that is the responsibility of the church. It's not to sit back and wait for a pastor or to sit back and wait for a crusade or anything of the sort. Several years ago, the Lord gave me a vision in Jackson where he showed me a very bright light, which was indicative of a crusade. And as soon as that crusade ended, the darkness enveloped Jackson again. And then one by one, I saw little spotlets, little lights beginning to appear all over Jackson. And the Lord spoke to me and he said, that bright light you saw was a crusade, but look at what happened when you left. All the darkness returned. But what you're now seeing is the light of the world. The individuals who live in Jackson, who know him as Lord and Savior, who talk to God and pray to God, who are now lighting their communities. That is what the church is all about. And one last thing before I move to our segment this evening. You want to see unity in the church? Read the book of Acts chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 4. When the Spirit of God was given, the resulting unity brought about everything being in common. There was no lack in the church in that environment. None. People who had property sold it, brought it and laid it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to every man as his need arose. That is what unity is. That is what the baptism of the Holy Spirit results in. Not just tongue talking and a feeling up and down your back and a nice thing. That is not what it's about. It's about helping to meet the needs of people, first of all, in your assembly, and then in your community, where there is no lack. Go read it. I didn't write it. Go read it. End of Acts chapter 2, end of Acts chapter 4. You'll see it there as a result of the baptism of the Holy Spirit. That's my advice to the church. Stop playing games. Stop the nonsense. Change the processes which you are involved in, and let us deploy the army that sits in front of us every Sunday. Let's empower them, give them the capacity to be able to go out and make a difference. And that is my contribution to tonight. Now, tonight is a very special night. Today is CARICOM Day. I believe our Prime Minister, who was formerly chairperson of CARICOM, handed over to the Right Honorable Prime Minister of Jamaica, Mr. Holness, and he has now taken over that responsibility. But we are going to be honored and privileged to have a very special guest with us tonight. And I also am pleased this evening to have a very special guest with me as well. Not just a special guest that's a special guest, but a special guest. And by now, you would think that I've lost it. I haven't. I am still very mentally astute. But I do have a very special guest joining me tonight. And of course, you would know who that is. And so I want us in the loyal opposition, sons and daughters all, to welcome Marcia Weeks as she joins. Good evening, Marcia. It is so nice to have you joining me tonight. I am so pleased and so happy to have you.
I must say thank you, and I must say I feel very welcome.
Great, wonderful.
I feel very welcome to the Marcia Week show.
It's good to have you on your show. And I must say, you've had two very powerful shows over the last two. I managed to watch quite a bit of last night's, and I began to go through a bit of the one on Friday. And I don't know if that in any way fired me up into the aspect tonight, but I think it had more to do with brass tacks and what I heard where the church was concerned. And I felt, look, it is time we call a spade, stop beating around the bush, and indicate who troubles Barbados and what needs to be done.
Well, yes, we've been having, some powerful shows, thought-provoking, for every show that somebody thinks is great, other people might think, I don't like it too much. But I think overall, I believe that we are carrying out the mandate, Dr. Ferdinand, which is to educate and to motivate and to mobilize and to agitate. And that's why we come on here. You are not paid. None of the panelists and the guests, we don't. That's not what happens here. We come for love of country. And every time you get up and you come on, I was getting dressed to come. I said, oh Lord, I normally stay in the background tonight, man. You want to stay in the background? I said, and you know what, I whispered a prayer of thanks to God for you, Dr. Ferdinand, that it gives me a break on a Monday, that I don't have to, I can just listen in the background and do whatever I need to support you. So I want to thank you for being, committed to the cause, and I know you wouldn't have it any other way. This is your country, but to the cause of Barbados, so that excuse me, so that we can we can have this time of education, you know. And so I want to publicly, and I have been saying thank you to you, on and off air, but not with, I don't know, I haven't done it recently with you on air. So I just want to thank you on behalf of Barbados for what you do. And we are grateful for the preparation and the sacrifice.
Well, thank you so very much, Marcia. And I have to say thank you as well to you and Dave for being such tremendous support in the background. You know, Dave, I mean, Dave is just remarkable. And I sometimes wonder what we would do without him on the show.
Yes, yes, a great, great, great asset,
Great support.
and great support, great support. Dr. Ferdinand, while we wait on our next guests, we should be logging on very, very soon. We want to just let everybody know what's coming up on this show. But before I talk about what's coming on this show tonight, Dr. Ferdinand, on Sunday, we are hitting the streets again in prayer on Sunday. Okay, folks, on Sunday, we are going out again, and we're going to be praying this time in Christchurch. All right. And so those of you who want to come to join with us, you're most welcome to join with us. So if Dave could put up those flyers. And this time, Dr. Ferdinand, we're going to be meeting at 1:30 p.m. We're going to meet right there at Sheraton Center. Sheraton
Wonderful.
Center, yes, the
Yes.
Christchurch. Get Thee Behind Me, Satan motorcade and prayer drive, Sunday, July 13th, and it's 1:30 p.m. right there at Sheraton Mall. And from Sheraton Mall, we go to Kendall Hill and all the way in. We're going in. I don't have it all in my head, all the places, but I know we're going Gall Hill and and we end where we're going to end up in Silver Hill. All right, so that's where we're actually going. What are we doing? Individual and community prayers, scripture reading, and we're going to be talking about safety tips and so on. So, folks, we if Dave could put the other one up, we really need you to come out. The warfare that we're in. If you listen to Reverend Ferdinand tonight, those of you who are of the Christian faith, we're very aware that everybody who's on each night, you don't necessarily share the same faith, but you come on because we found some things in common. And one of the things we have in common, Dr. Ferdinand, is the love of our
For our
country.
country.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And I love that. I have great Rastafari friends. When I tell you great, sincere Muslims, and I respect everybody's religion. I'm one Christian person who I love the fact that I can relate to everybody. I love it. And that's what, I mean, obviously we are I'm of the Christian faith, and so this is a prayer. This prayer, and it's originated within from Christians, not from just me alone, because we are talking with Christians in Christchurch. And so those of you who are so persuaded, you can come along and you can share with us in that. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that, but I think I see our guests. So if we could just can we tell the people what we have lined up? I'll let you go ahead, Dr. Ferdinand. What do we have lined up tonight?
Well, for tonight, and it's going to be an interesting night. It's CARICOM.
Yeah.
Today's CARICOM Day. And tonight we're going to have a couple of very special guests. Our first guest is going to be coming in from the island of Dominica. And I believe you were recently there. You did
Yes.
several mics on the move there in Dominica,
Yes.
and you shared quite a bit, and they shared quite a bit with us on the show as well. And I
Yes.
think people would remember that. But we're first going to have in Thompson Fontaine, and
Yes.
we're going to hear a little bit about him. I think I have some stuff here to share when we introduce him in just a moment. And then right after Mr. Fontaine shares, and incidentally, Mr. Fontaine is the current political leader of the United Workers' Party, the main opposition party in Dominica. And I'll come back and just share a bit about him in a moment. But right after Mr. Fontaine finishes his segment, we're going to have Andrew Tucker. And how many of you would like to guess where Mr. Tucker is from? And you would tell immediately where he's from because there's quite a smile on Marcia's face. You would have seen Marcia's face smile up a bit there just now, because if my information serves me correctly, I think Mr. Tucker will be coming in, if I'm correct from the information I got, with from Jamaica.
Yes, but come on, I was smiling so sweetly. I was smiling sweetly at Dr. Fontaine, okay?
Yes. But there was a special little smirk I saw there when I
Oh,
mentioned
Lord.
Andrew. But,
Oh, Lord.
it's such a pleasure to have Mr. Fontaine with us tonight. And I'm going to, is he in yet? Have we brought him in as yet? Let's
Yes,
bring him in.
yes.
Let me add him to the stage. Good evening, Mr. Fontaine. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome to the Marcia Week show. You're joining the loyal opposition in Barbados, sons and daughters all. It's a pleasure to have you. And just before I give you the opportunity to greet the people, I just want them to know a little bit about you, if that's okay. He's a former IMF economist and university lecturer, and he served as the head of strategy at the Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission in Juba in South Sudan, an organization charged with the monitoring, evaluation, and oversight of the peace agreement in that country. And he holds a PhD in financial and international economics. And he's an author. He is an author. The Maroons of Dominica, 1764 to 1818, Resistance, Rebellion, and Freedom from Slavery. Welcome, Mr. Fontaine.
Well, very good evening to you and to Marcia and to your many listeners. It's a pleasure to be back again with you, certainly. And thank you for the very warm welcome.
Yes, for sure. Dr. Fontaine, I mean, we're happy to have you back. I mean, we've heard gotten so many great reviews. You don't even know. People said you've got to bring him back, bring them back. They want to hear more of the Caribbean. And what better day for us to focus on the Caribbean again? Today is CARICOM Day. And so we're happy to have you. But before we go into CARICOM, we want to hear about Dominica. Just could you give us a brief update on the politics in Dominica, especially on electoral reform? That is what you were speaking to us about when you were here the last time. So can you give us an update on what's happening there in Dominica?
Yes, absolutely. So we are basically in a waiting mode. The legislation was passed in March of this year. And the government has announced, the electoral office, in fact, has announced that they will begin the confirmation process on the 1st of September.
Yes.
And that will last for 1 year. So they're in the process of getting the different resources together, and hopefully it starts in 1 year. So what this will do is that every person who is currently on the voters list will get an opportunity to confirm that is their name. And once they do that, they'll remain on the list. If they're not able to confirm during that period, the names will be removed from the list. So that is the process by which the government hopes to cleanse a very bloated voters list of over 74,000 people in Dominica.
Wow. It's over by 74,000?
No, the total is 74. Population, we estimate between 60 and 65,000. So it's well past our natural population.
Oh, yes. My goodness. A whole 20-something thousand, almost 20-something thousand over Dr. Ferdinand.
Yes, over the population. I find that absolutely amazing. You have, they're probably at sea.
I think what it speaks to is the high level of migration that we've had out of Dominica over the years, and the fact that the Electoral Commission simply has not cleansed the list, so it has just piled up over time.
And
Yes.
it's so great to hear what is happening there, especially with that reform. And as you would know, Marcia was recently there with you, and you know, she did a wonderful expose of Dominica. I tell you, I
Absolutely.
learned a lot with regards. And incidentally, Marcia, one of my pastors is actually Dominican. Believe it.
Yes.
But today being CARICOM Day, Mr. Fontaine, how do you celebrate that in Dominica? How is that celebrated within the context of your country?
Well, to be quite honest, in Dominica, it's not observed at all. There is no fanfare, there is no
Wow.
celebration, there is no nothing. Uh, in a lot of ways, the CARICOM ideal or idea is lost to the people of Dominica. They don't see it as a viable organization. They have very little confidence in the whole notion of CARICOM. And so that's why you find there is very little celebration, none at all whatsoever. Not even a mention. I listened to the news outlets today, there was hardly any mention of it.
Wow.
It's just another day. It's just another day in Dominica, unfortunately.
Wow. And when we think of it, Dr. Ferdinand, we don't hear of any celebration here. It might be mentioned, but not
Yes.
this year for sure. I was checking the internet, and somebody could let us know if anything happened. I was speaking to Dave today. We heard not a peep about it. And our prime minister, she was for the last
Sure.
6 months, was the chair. And isn't that interesting? It would be good to find out, Dr. Fontaine, even with those who are watching from other countries, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad, we have them sometimes. Did you celebrate CARICOM Day today? It's important. There's a reason we're asking this question. We're going somewhere with it. Right? Now, it's hardly celebrated in Barbados. We heard nothing of it today, really.
Not really.
Yeah. And I'm waiting to hear from others. You're saying it wasn't celebrated in Dominica. So my next question to you, sir, is CARICOM and the regional integration, that vision and policy and idea, that grand idea of regional integration and CARICOM. Do you think it's failing? I know this is a big question.
No, I think the answer to that is simple. It has failed. I mean, the idea of
Mm,
CARICOM bringing all of us together is just that, an idea. It never really materialized. It never really got to that point where we can truly celebrate it. So the Caribbean today is more insular. Individual countries are more isolated than they were several years ago.
really?
CARICOM simply has not reason to that ideal. I mean, for example, the simple idea of the single market and economy, which was supposed to drive a lot of that integration. You have free movements of people and so on. That has simply not happened. A number of countries have not accepted the notion that others from other countries can come. I just went through Barbados a couple of days ago, and I could have been in any country in the world, in terms of the process that you have to go through. So it seems to me that we are not there as yet. And also on the critical, I talked about the CSME, but there is also the critical idea of the Caribbean Court of Justice, which was set
Mm,
up 20 years ago in 2005. And since then, only 5 of the 15 Caribbean countries have joined on to that, onto the CCJ. So there
why
again,
is that? Why is that?
Yeah.
it's just a lack of belief. I believe it's a lack of confidence in the institutions of the Caribbean. And it's something that we have to take a very close look at. But it seems to me that the idea when it was started was a very good one, in terms of bringing the region together. They could share, ideas, do trade and so on. It simply has not materialized. So in a lot of ways, I believe the people of the Caribbean are feeling disappointed that CARICOM has not lived up to its expectations, that to some extent they've done some progress on regional security, because that's the area where I think they've done a little bit of work. But outside of that, and even today, in fact, the Secretary General, opening remarks at the 49th CARICOM meeting
Mhm.
indicated that CSME is falling behind. And that to me is the singular most important achievement to date. But even today, it is not as vibrant. It is not
Wow.
as adhered to as it was several years ago. So we, in a lot of ways, we are regressing as with CARICOM as an idea, as an ideal. and not getting to that place.
But Dr. Fontaine, as I listen to you, as a child, I go back to the days when I used to see the schooners pulling into the Carinage or Carinage, as some people call it, in Bridgetown from different islands of the Caribbean carrying bananas and different produce. And that's not something I'm seeing today. I don't know how much of that actually happens. And when you talk about the Caribbean single market and economy, then we also have to pay attention to matters of our currency, where there needs to be probably some regulation where our currencies are concerned, because in Trinidad, a Barbados dollar is actually worth $3 and something cents. In Trinidad, I think $2 and something cents EC. So there's still that disparity in terms of our finances. And then you talk about the matter of free movement. My mind goes back to, I think it was the 2007 World Cup. And I believe we had freer movement during the World Cup than we have had since the World Cup. Where if I wanted to come and work in Dominica, I have to go to an accreditation council here in Barbados to have letters of accreditation for what I'm going to be doing working in Dominica or coming to work in Dominica. And one would have felt that by now there should be that freedom of movement. You should be able to come from Dominica to Barbados, work here. I mean, people go from Florida to North Carolina, from North Carolina to California. They don't even show a passport. They don't show a driver's license, anything of that sort. And it's like the idea has simply remained exactly that, an idea. And it's not really made any substantive movement forward.
Yes, indeed. And you talked about the idea of the currency. I was passing through Barbados and my EC dollar was useless. I wanted a quick chicken at Shefford's, your franchise there in Barbados, and I could not use my EC dollar. And we talk about the common single market. Each country has its own currency, and so on. And we've not even moved in that area. If you compare that, for example, with the European Union, where big countries like the Germans, they gave up their German mark. The French gave up their French franc, so that they could have a true single market. We're not seeing that in the Caribbean. So this lack of focus, I think, has a lot to do with our leaders and the way they view the region. And I believe the sentiment that existed with the breakup of the Federation in 1962 still exists. This famous 1 minus 1 from 10 is 0. I believe that idea is still there, that you have different classes of countries. And the idea that, because one of the countries that have been the loudest against the free movement in my mind is Barbados.
Yes.
In terms of not, because the feeling is that the Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad and so on will be overrun by the smaller countries, and that fear is still there, and it is very unfortunate. Our cricket has survived, but is not even as strong as it used to be. Again, reflecting a lot of the issues that we have in the Caribbean region.
Yeah. So, I'm listening to you. You talked about the not being able to trade in our own currency. And I remember hearing the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines saying, he has been trying to get his farmers in St. Vincent to be paid in their money. Because when they're paid in Trinidad dollars, they can't use it. And then Trinidad don't have enough US currency to pay them in US currency. So what has happened is that he said, well, I've stopped trading. I've stopped sending my bananas to Trinidad because I cannot. He said for him, Trinidadian money, it's TNT money is like monopoly. He can't monopoly money for him in
right.
And it's the same thing as you're saying. You were here and you could not go to Shepherd and use your EC dollars. And it's all these years we're talking about the single market economy, and we can't even use our own currencies. I can't take a Barbadian dollar and use it in Trinidad. In fact, at this point, I can't even get it changed. So can you change Barbadian dollars in Dominica at this stage?
No, you can't. You have to convert to US and then from US back to Asian. It's really, So at the very basic level, CARICOM has not evolved, and that to me is a major problem.
Yeah.
And that is the fundamental exchange that we're talking about. And if you're talking about Trinidad and St. Vincent, that's a classic example. Not being able, having to forgo trade, because at the end of the day, they probably just have to do some battering, and that may not be the best thing. So it is very unfortunate that that's where we are. But
And
but again, I don't get the sense that our Caribbean leaders are too bothered by this. They go through the motions of the meetings. It's good. They're bringing on associate members, bringing on Anguilla and all the and Cayman Islands and so on, and which is fine. But they brought on Haiti, which is great. But even then, I still don't see the meshing of the organization as it should.
I mean, it's hard to figure out why you would have an organization of this nature that is so inoperative. Our people have no problem, Dr. Fontaine. As I just mentioned, one of my pastors is Dominican. Our people have no problems. We even had a Bahamian bishop of the Anglican Church here in Barbados. We have had Pentecostal ministers from St. Vincent. As a matter of fact, one of our Pentecostal ministers currently in Barbados is Trinidadian. We have no problem meshing. As a matter of fact, just today, Dr. Fontaine, I was speaking with a lady at Cost You Less, one of the checkers, and she's Guyanese. And I'm going like, if we are so capable of integrating as people, we don't have any problem getting along with one another as people. What is the problem at the head? Because I don't know what the saying is in Dominica. In Barbados, we have a saying: as the head goes, so does the body. And what is the problem that you could identify in terms of the leadership? And I'm focusing on that because it has to be more than just gathering to have a nice meal and what we would call fellowship and so on. That's costing taxpayers money. What is coming out of all of that?
I'll put it down to lack of political will. And when you think about it, you go, for example, the 49th meeting, there is no communique that comes out at the end that says, well, that is what we aspire to. These are the decisions that we get. So we have those meetings. It is clear to me that the leadership, the Caribbean leadership up to now has simply not seen it fit to progress beyond where we are. And, we are talking about even having an assembly. Why isn't not a CARICOM parliament, for example, where we could discuss and debate legislation and ensure that the legislations that go in the different countries are consistent across all countries? Not even that. So it is clear to me that there is a severe lack of political will and a feeling that there is really no need for that type of union. And again, it could be because the countries are so uneven, but we've seen it successfully done in other countries. The European Union is one. In Africa, we have the SACU region. We have different regions. The ECOSAF region. You have different regions. IGAD in South Sudan, I was that union, and they're very effective. These countries, they work together. They have trade. They share resources and so on, and they're able to provide support to other countries in different areas. Simple things like that should be done, but it's not been done. I would like to see a CARICOM region where we have a secretariat, for example, that supports the agriculture ministries in various countries or provide expertise to help in trade and so on. But none of that exists. And that is something I believe, if you're serious about integration, we need to start the conversation. But again, it points to the leadership. And you're very correct. As the leadership goes, as the head goes, so the rest of the body. It has to be driven by the political leadership within the region.
Yes, sir. And somebody, one of the, I'm reading the comments from those in the audience, and some fantastic comments here. And Adrian Hines is saying that the late Edward Seaga said in 1958 the West Indies Federation failed because it was a top-down organization, that the bottom, which is the people, were never part of its emergence. That's quite interesting.
Yes.
And someone says there's another great comment. People are believing that we need to have one currency and so on. But there was another one that I missed. Oh, they talked about each um, prime minister, each country wants to have, to be the leader. They want to be the top dog. So there is some of that going. But let me ask you this, sir. I was in Dominica, and you had, I mean, so many mango trees and lots of mangoes.
Oh,
And I was speaking to a couple of farmers, and I said to them, oh, you must export a lot of this overseas. And they said to me, well, not really. A lot of it falls on the ground and it just rots.
wow.
Now we're in Barbados, and we when you look at our import bill, and even Jamaica's, I did some research on that. Most of the Caribbean countries, they import, I'm sorry, more than 45% of their food bill or their food needs is imported. But then you look at Dominica, and you look at Guyana, and you look at Trinidad and parts of Jamaica, and you think about CARICOM. What do you think that? Well, I guess when you look at it, CARICOM, you would think, I guess you might say this is an area that CARICOM has failed in the area of agricultural exports.
Oh, absolutely. And that is something that at the very basic level that could have been developed. For example, as you said, Dominica, we have so much waste in Dominica in terms of agriculture produce. The mango is a very good example of that. Probably 60-70% just goes to waste. It just stays there. It rots on the ground, and that is it. That could be feeding into the processing industry in Jamaica or Barbados. But what has happened is, even where you have the development of a very strong agro-processing industry, as we have in Jamaica, they're looking to the US market and outside of the region. They're not even looking inwardly. So you have that very serious issue. And I believe, again, it boils back to the lack of pride, probably, and the lack of belief in ourselves. The same kind of suspicion with which I believe we view the CCJ, as I talked about earlier, is the same way I believe we view the Caribbean. And notwithstanding, as Dr. indicated, that we mingle well and on a very personal level, that is going on. But that's at a personal level. Beyond that, we don't benefit from the ties. The Caribbean institutions that have been set up, like the university.
Yes.
One time in the 70s and 80s, that was, everybody looked to those regional institutions. Now, most of our students do not want to go to the regional institutions. They prefer to go to other countries. So you have those issues where the institutions have stagnated or failed, and we simply do not seem to have it in us, I believe, to move to start that conversation. And we have very good examples that we could look to, as I said, across Africa, across Europe. There are good examples of integration movements that are working, that are functioning, that are beneficial. And it's up to us, I believe, in the Caribbean region to begin to have that discussion and begin to see how we can push it beyond the pleasantries and the niceties of those conferences that we're seeing as is taking place right now in Jamaica.
Well, Dr. Fontaine, we have a video that we'd like to play and probably get your comments on it. But this is a video of the Trinidad Prime Minister. And I don't believe she attended. I made a note here while we were speaking, Marcia, that two things that need to happen here. One, the protectionism in terms of countries needs to be smashed or dismantled, and there needs to be a serious shake-up in CARICOM. And maybe she might be one of the catalysts for this. So I'm going to ask Dave to run this video, Dr. Fontaine, and let's hear your take on it.
Okay. Well, wait until he gets the video sorted. But the whole I think I'll just summarize it because I had watched it. It's where the new Prime Minister, Dr. Kamala Prasad, she said, well, she didn't go. She sent someone. It's not that they were not represented, but she sent someone, and there is a bit of uproar about it. And I saw a commentator in the video was actually saying that it's a waste of time, and he was glad that she didn't go. So I want to hear, you are aspiring to be a prime minister, of Dominica. Is that something that you would do? And what do you think? Do you think she's justified in not going?
I saw the comments, and I saw the position of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm guessing it comes from a deep place of disappointment that she's expressed, and by literally snubbing the institution, given the fact that she would be welcomed as the latest leader, although it's a second time around. So it is I don't want to criticize her, but I believe that if CARICOM is going to survive, it will need the leadership of Trinidad and Tobago, and it is very important that that hopefully that is not a sign that she has no interest in CARICOM. As she indicated, there were other more pressing issues at home that she had to deal with. But let's hope that, because I still feel that there is hope for CARICOM. I still believe that if the Caribbean leaders are serious, that it can be salvaged. Because we have basically now with Haiti, it's probably about 17 to 18 million people in the region, with Haiti having the overwhelming number, 11 million. But I believe that, with some focus, we can get there. And it would be unfortunate if her decision not to participate is the beginning of a disinterest in CARICOM. Hopefully, she has good reasons not to have attended. And I would hope that her leadership, would be essential. And as an aspiring leader myself in Dominica, I still believe in the value and the worth of CARICOM. And I believe that it can be reorganized, it can be re-strategized, and it can work in the best interest of the Caribbean people. But it has to be a collective effort. It has to be a willingness. It has to be an infusion of political will and desire to get it done.
Yes.
No, I was just, is that the video there, Marcia? I'm
I
not going to
don't.
where to
No,
play
I
it then,
don't think
right?
so. Yeah, we just ignore
Okay.
the video. Yeah.
Yeah, for now. Well, Dr. Fontaine, I would say it was a real pleasure having you with us tonight, and to hear your views, especially as you've mentioned, and Marcia, as an aspiring potential Prime Minister of Dominica. And I'm glad to hear you make the comment about wanting to see CARICOM continue, wanting to see it evolve. I believe it's going to take some new leadership, and just wondered what would be your final thoughts, as it relates to CARICOM itself. If as Prime Minister of Dominica, what are some of the things that you think you could bring to the table, so to speak, that would help to move CARICOM to the place where you believe it ought to be at?
Well, I think firstly, there must be a renewed sense of interest. There must be input and vigor and a determination to get it to work. And that would require a lot more serious discussion. I was very disappointed. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was discussion of the OECS even breaking away. That suggestion came out that the OECS should move on their own and ignore CARICOM. That insularity has no place, I believe, in the broader scheme of things. It has been shown that where countries are able to come together and, marry their different strengths and so on, that those regions have really flourished. And I believe that we can do a lot better. I would like to see a renewed commitment by the leadership of the Caribbean to CARICOM. And let's begin that discussion. Let's look at setting up a parliament, CARICOM parliament that would discuss and debate, legislation. Let us look at strengthening the current institutions. Let the countries that are still not part of the CCJ become a part of the CCJ. Those different institutions, the CSME, let us do the work of the single market. It has already been signed. Let us do it in practical ways. Allow this free movement of people within the region. Let labor find its place within the region. Those things I believe can be done. We have to start the conversation, and I hope it's not too late. I hope that we can still salvage what remains of CARICOM and take it to that other level, which I believe would ultimately benefit all of us in the Caribbean region.
Yes. Well, I tell you, it's really a lot of food for thought.
Oh yeah.
And when I started listening to the discussion all of this week, because we there were quite a number of persons within the from the Caribbean having discussions about CARICOM and seriously, saying that they're not interested in it anymore. So I think this is good, and I'm glad to hear. I mean, your response saying, well, you're hoping that it will survive. Some people are asking, survive to do what? But I think this is it's an ongoing discussion that we need to have about CARICOM. And sir, I want to thank you for joining us
My
tonight, Dr.
pleasure.
Fontaine. Quite interesting, and lots to think about. Thank you so very much.
Thank
And
Yeah,
you.
yes, we look
absolutely.
look forward to having you another time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank
And,
you and have a good night.
and
Appreciate it.
who knows, we may just have him a good next time, Marcia, as Prime Minister.
Who
You
knows?
never know.
Well, God bless, my
All
friend,
right.
and
Thank
thank you
you.
so
Thank
much for
you.
being with us tonight. It was a
Sure.
pleasure having you.
Yes,
Okay. Bye
yes,
bye.
God bless. I love that. We might
Uh,
just have him. We might just have him as prime minister. But as we wait on our other guest, we can see him in he's in the green
but
room and getting himself ready. I'd love to hear from people, Dr. Ferdinand, or our viewers, whether they think that CARICOM should as an entity should remain. Is it something that you think? What about the viewers? Do you think that CARICOM should remain, or is it a case where you might think that, well, we need to revisit it? How about that? I would love to hear from.
yes, it would be
um
great to see the comments that they make.
mm, what's your personal view, Dr. Ferdinand?
Well, personally, Marcia, I hope it would remain. I think it needs to have a significant shake-up. I think, as Dr. Fontaine has said, there needs to be an engagement of conversations. I like the idea of even like the single currency, or even the ability to use our different currencies in our different islands, maybe a Caribbean central bank type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that, as I look at a place like the United States as a republic, each state has its own governance.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the United States as a country has its own governance as well, and
Yes.
those states fall under the governance of the entire country. And still, decisions, there's certain decisions that are made by the United States government that the states have to carry out, and there are others that the states have to create their own aspects of legislation and so on. And so there is a model, at least, that shows us it's workable, where prime ministers and leaders of the individual countries can continue to lead their countries. But what concerns me most of all, Marcia, is the
Yes.
agricultural sector. That
Mm-hmm.
agricultural sector, the pandemic showed us, and these recent tariffs and that we had showed us the need for CARICOM to really come together in terms of agriculture. And one quick last thing, I don't know if you saw it, but I did a quick search to discover the only country, Marcia, in the world that is self-sufficient agriculturally. Do you know which country that is, Marcia?
No,
It's
I don't.
Guyana.
Oh, wow. In the
Guyana
world.
in the world. They have the map of the world. The question is there, and the only place highlighted on a red map with blue is Guyana.
Oh my. And can you imagine? And we 45%, more than 45% of Barbados is food imports.
Yeah.
It's coming from the US and from the UK and from Canada.
Yes. Yes.
It's not within the region. And also, I mean, it's similar for Jamaica and for most of the other countries. When Guyana probably could feed all of us. So it's rather interesting. But people are, let's just read. Our guest is ready, but we just read a couple. Nigel is saying, CARICOM would not survive without a modern political philosophy, vision, and sagacious political leadership. And somebody says wholeness sounds promising.
Hmm.
Okay, but he's dealing with the same old structure, so I don't know how much promise that is. But we'll see. He's supposed to be the new head for the next 6 months. And somebody says CARICOM has has been an institution. It must be dismantled and replaced. We should be moving to a Caribbean Union based on common security, common sovereignty. Very interesting. Well, let's our topic tonight is the Caribbean. Stay alert, stay focused, stay together. And we have, for the first time on the Marcia Week show, we have a political commentator from Jamaica. And I happen to have I had one of the best interviews ever that I had. I tell you, with Mr. Tucker from Jamaica. I was the interviewee. He was the host. I was a guest. And I was really, his knowledge of Barbados, I was blown away by that. And so I'm excited tonight about having him on the show. So let me just, while you bring him into the studio, Dr. Ferdinand, let me just introduce to everyone Mr. Andrew Tucker. Mr. Andrew Tucker is a multilingual educator and university lecturer specializing in Romance languages, with fluency in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. With advanced studies in sociology and communication, he's a sharp cultural critic with deep insight into the intersections of language, identity, and power. As the host of Rumination with Andrew on YouTube, his incisive and globally informed political commentary has earned him a reputation as a bold and erudite voice on Caribbean and Latin American affairs. His work focuses primarily on Afro-Dominican, Afro-Cuban, and Haitian studies. Andrew is also a guest columnist for both the Jamaica Gleaner and the Jamaica Observer, and frequently shares his analysis at international conferences. So we welcome, for the first time on the Marcia Week's show, we welcome Mr. Andrew Tucker. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. And I'm happy that I was able to make it. And, I sometimes wonder when people read introduction if they're talking about me. Are you hearing me well? Is the volume?
Oh, yes. We're hearing you very well.
Yes, we're hearing you and we're seeing you. Yes. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you very much again for inviting me to the program.
Yes. And before Dr. Ferdinand asks you the first question, we're hosting it together tonight, the show together tonight, sir. Have you ever been to Barbados?
Never, and I would love to be there. That's on my bucket list of countries to visit because Barbados has always been in the minds of Jamaicans. In fact, when I was at Howard University, I taught many Barbadians Spanish, when I was a lecturer there in the Department of Romance Languages and Literatures. So, and I've had a lot of conversations with them, and I've always been impressed with how studious, with how erudite, with how brilliant and astute Barbadians were. So it's not only that we've heard that Barbadians, are the leading or have the leading education system in the Caribbean as a whole, but I think I have through my experience testified. I can testify to that reality.
Yes.
Well,
wonderful.
to never have come to Barbados and still to write so much about us, Marcia, and to know so much about us is remarkable. And you owe us a visit, and we look forward to welcoming you for whatever your first visit is.
Absolutely.
You have to come enjoy some flying fish. Oh dear.
That is what I'm thinking about.
You still have flying fish, though, Marcia.
Yes, absolutely.
But Andrew, and I hope you don't mind me calling you Andrew.
Absolutely not.
Thank you. I'm sure you're familiar with what is currently transpiring in our country. We've had some significant increase of crime and gang violence in our country. Robberies, I'm told, are exceptionally high, often not necessarily reported. And very recently, we've heard so much about misinformation, false information, propaganda, all those different kinds of things. But very recently, we heard that Jamaica has experienced a significant decline in terms of your crime rate. And it's almost as if we are almost left to think, I hope it's not propaganda or misinformation. What has been the strategy behind the reduction of your crime?
I must give a caveat here. I do not live in Jamaica. I've not lived in Jamaica for the past 25 years. I do visit frequently, and I keep in touch with everything that is happening there. But let me just say this, address this news that we're getting about crime reduction in Jamaica. I would like to say that some people agree with it, and mostly they are from the JLP, that's the incumbent government, and that is one of its propagandists and its propagandas for the upcoming election, that Jamaicans are now feeling safe in their country and they have had this great reduction in crime and violence. But as someone who follows politics around the world, including El Salvador, where we have Presidente Bukele, my understanding is that Andrew Holness, among other Caribbean leaders, are using some of the tactics and the strategies that he's using, including hard policing. So we understand that crime and violence in Jamaica is reducing. However, we understand that police brutality, on the other hand, is on the uptick. So I don't know in terms of where we are going with that. How do we have a balance between police brutality, police killings, and also, the homicide rate that we have? So I think that there is a lot of controversy surrounding that sort of information. I don't want to say that it is not happening. I am reading from the Gleaner, however, that people are not feeling secure as the information is coming out. And I'm still seeing some brutal killings in Jamaica still going on. So, but I must say that we are not inundated with the brutal criminal activities that we used to see in the papers on a daily occurrence. Another thing in El Salvador, what they have done in addition to the hard policing is that they have also not reported police abuse. They have also clamped down on anybody who's reporting crime statistics in El Salvador. So we don't know if in Jamaica, I'm not saying that they are doing that, but we're not sure if they're also, suppressing crime statistics and crime information. I'm hearing that from the gossip channels that there are lots of crimes in Jamaica that have gone unreported. So it could be that it's not really changed, but public perception is a big thing. We know during the pandemic that they told us about this, health emergency crisis, and people thought that what they were telling us, was true. And we're learning that much of what they told us, if not all of what they told us, was not true. So it's about public perception, the fact that people were afraid of the virus and of the media propaganda around this virus made people believe that, in fact, the virus was a danger, posed a danger to our lives. So everything depends on public perception. And public perception is that crime and violence, yes, has been reduced.
That's reduced. Now, thank you for that, because it makes us wonder. We see all of that coming out of Jamaica, and I wanted to know. So I'm really happy that you responded, to that. But in Barbados, there's concern that we have right now, because, as Dr. Ferdinand said to you, there's a definite increase in crime in Barbados presently, and there's a lot of there's perception, and some people might feel they have facts as well, that some of our politicians are involved with criminals. And there is the concern, there's a lot of discussion about when we have our next election, are we going to see some of what we used to see in Jamaica? I don't know if you were living in Jamaica around about that time, if you're wearing that orange, if that's an orange shirt you're wearing, and me with this almost green outfit and a green curtain in the back. That could be a problem, because orange represented the PNP, green the Jamaica Labour Party. Now, people are kind of concerned, because they're saying, hold a minute, are we going to have a similar situation in Barbados as we had in Jamaica, where crime would be politically aligned and motivated, etc.?
I don't think that that is going to be the same case in Barbados, as you're strategically situated in a different position than Jamaica is, right? So we are really at the back door of the United States, and really there in terms of the positioning between Latin America and North America. So we have the drug trade between Colombia and the United States, which in Barbados that might not be the case, and the whole matter of the gun trafficking, as you would see in the Dominican Republic and Jamaica. So I think that in Barbados situation, and then we must say that the poverty rate in Barbados might not, even though Jamaica is saying that their poverty rate is also down, but it's not the same level of desperation that you would see in Jamaica. So it might not get to that level, I hope.
Well, we're hoping. I have a follow-up question to that. We're hoping that it doesn't get to that. I mean, and the reality is, Mr. Tucker, we don't know where the source of the guns coming from, because we've not been told that. But I mean, there's so much guns on the streets of Barbados. I mean, every day, pop. It's almost like we are living Tivoli, or Denham Town, or one of those places. But I want you to tell us, what did Jamaica do? Because I noticed that I saw one person in an orange and another person in a green shirt, and they were hugging each other. And though they were at there were political rallies going on close, and there was no fighting like when I was a child.
Well, we have matured. I would say that we have matured.
Explain to us what happened. What happened?
I think that we have matured in terms of this, you're being in green and somebody else being in orange. I think it is more now transnational crime. And it's about protecting territories in terms of different gangsters protecting their territories. Because remember now that during the 1980s and so on, the politicians were in charge of the criminal proceeds and the criminal organizations. Now we have the criminals controlling the politicians. And that is what we have now. So where Andrew Holness, as he's suggesting now, he's about to launch a war on the gangs, because he realizes that the gangs have taken over. And that is what happened in Tivoli Gardens in 2010. Remember when the United States wanted, Christopher Douglas Coke, and the people went out there and they protested, and they said that we are not going to give up this guy because he's our benefactor. He's the one who sends our children to school and who protect us and all of that stuff. So what has happened in Jamaica is that the criminal elements took over the state and has gained control and complete control over the state. And the state now is wanting or desires now to take back control. Whether or not they are going to do so, that's another story. But that is what Andrew Holness says that he's doing. He's waging a war on the gangs. But will he win? That's a big question. I don't know.
Just before Dr. Ferdinand asks the next question, just a follow-up thought on what I as a Jamaican, I am very I was just very enlightened a while ago when you said the difference now is that the criminals control the politicians. While in the 70s and 80s and 90s was the politicians that were controlling the criminals. And I want to make that distinction, and I want Barbadians to think about it. It's something to keep in their head.
Because just to say also, remember now that even during the great Christopher Douglas Coke saga, there were many rumors that Christopher Douglas Coke controlled the politicians. Even Mr. Siaga, before Mr. Siaga died, that he actually slapped him, in his own constituency. That is how powerful. Box him, as Jamaicans would say. He actually slapped him. He smacked him. That is to show you the level of control that they had. And that is why Bruce Golding was very careful. He was not, as the US was suggesting, perhaps directly involved in criminal activities, but he understood that Christopher Douglas Coke had an enormous amount of power over the politics in West Kingston, and he had to be careful in how he dealt with, having him extradited. And that is how eventually the US won. And that is why I'm saying that we also know that the CIA controls the criminal element. So it's a very complex topic. You know, this is a
Wow.
very complex topic. Yeah.
So what you're telling us then, Andrew, is that in the Caribbean,
Mhm.
we have a CIA presence in the Caribbean, impacting our criminal elements, which of course by extension certainly is going to impact our countries.
The gun trafficking. We know that the gun trafficking, where are they coming from? We know that they're coming from the United States. When you look at a poor country like Haiti, the poorest, as they say, in the Western Hemisphere, and in Jamaica, they're the ones sending the guns from Haiti. It's guns for marijuana, for drugs, and they traffic guns between Haiti and Jamaica sends marijuana to Haiti. So where are these Haitians getting these powerful weapons from? And they can't even afford food. And these are very powerful military weapons. So we know that, of course, the CIA has to be involved.
And obviously, they have some interest in terms of keeping the Caribbean area to some degree unstable through those kind of elements.
Correct.
But listen, one of the areas, Andrew, that we are always faced with in our countries is our youth element.
Yes.
And as you know, every country, I think, to some degree, is struggling to bring some sense of relativity and some sense of connection with the youth, where they're going, what provisions can be made, and so on. And of course, one of the areas that is very influential, I have learned over the past several years, particularly in Jamaica, is your music industry, your entertainment industry.
Yes.
How do you, is there any connection really with the entertainment industry and the aspects of it in affecting the politics of Jamaica, and which of course then by extension we can see where that would happen in terms of Barbados?
Yes, I think there is, and I think that Jamaica sets the trend, which unfortunately we are not setting. And I've been saying it on Rumination with Andrew, that we are not setting the right trend for the Caribbean. We like to think that our musicians, like the Vibes Cartels and all these, because they're internationally renowned, we like to think that they are, because they're so powerful and they're so famous, we think that Jamaica stands tall in the Caribbean. But when you look at Vibes Cartel and see some of the lyrics that he has, dispersed out there, and what he's encouraging, the lifestyle, his values, I don't think that these are healthy for the Caribbean. But what is happening in Jamaica, however, do you know who are behind these, sort of supporting the music? The academia, the University of the West Indies. So you have people like the Karen Coopers and these people who will tell you that they are about attacking systems of power and they need this music to do so. Another excuse they use is that they say that Vibes Cartel is not the problem, he's a reflection of the culture. So they say that he ought not to be blamed for the sort of lyrics that he's actually, singing in his songs. It is that it's reflecting the Jamaican culture. And if he's seeing lots of violence, if he's seeing lots of, uncivilized sort of behavior, then he's going to include that in his music. But we're suggesting that if he has that amount of influence on young people, then we can't expect to have him singing those lyrics and think that it's okay. But the fact is that the middle class and the upper echelons of society, they too are working with global elites to keep Black people particularly and the Caribbean young people in their places. And I think the best way they can do that is to keep us, paralyzed in a state of paralysis. And the same thing is happening in the Black community. We know that Black Americans, for example, were vociferous and they were people who stood up for what was right. But after the 1960s and they started to be the whole matter of integration, that they just simply went into that. The CIA took over the hip hop music and they started now to talk about, to highlight violence and this sort of bad man and gangsterism, and this gangster sort of who the Black man is, that we are all gangsters, and that is who we are. And I've been saying on my platform, why are we in the Caribbean, we like to talk about Africa, but why do we think that African culture is a demean and a sort of debased sort of culture. We don't talk about Africans in the sense that we can speak well, we can dress well, we can behave civilized. We always look at what is the raw chaw and say that this is a reflection of African history. When you look at Africa, however, Africans don't behave like that. Because as I'm saying to people, our violent culture is coming from Western culture. It is remnants of slavery and the plantation culture. So what we're saying is African is not African, even including Jamaican Creole. I tell them the Jamaican Creole is not an African language. It is a Caribbean, a Western language, which has, remnants of English, African, of course, languages, Spanish, Portuguese, and stuff like that. So when we are thinking that we're actually empowering our people by embracing this African identity, we are destroying ourselves.
Yes. Wow. And I know people here, somebody said, I don't want to be impatient, but I want to hear his comment on Mottley.
Yes.
Listen, we're going to get there because I know we have a list of questions we're going through, but this issue of the crime, I want to leave time at the end to get back there because you have my head going, Mr. Tucker, when you mentioned about the CIA, and I was so happy that Dr. Ferdinand picked up on it. But I want to move on from
before you go. There's a book called Born for Dead. I think it was written by Stephanie Black. I think she was the one who also Born for Dead. That gives you a really good history in terms
Born
of
for Dead.
Born for Dead was written by an American journalist who was, I think, a graduate student at Columbia University, and she went to Jamaica and she did a lot of research there, and she wrote that book, Born for Dead by Stephanie Black. She was the same producer of the film, the documentary on Jamaica, Life and Death. Jamaica, right. I think she was also the one who the producer of that film, and she wrote the book, and it was very informative. Those of you who want to read the nexus of the political world with the criminal elements, you need to get a copy of that book, Born for Dead.
Yes. But let me ask you something. There's something that we're seeing in the as a spin-off from Dr. Ferdinand's question. Where in Dominica, they're bringing in Vibes Cartel, where the entertainment is being used to bring the political message. We see even here in Barbados, you had some of your entertainers who were sampling music for the Prime Minister of Barbados. And so whoever can pay these artists, and the artists take one of their songs and then they put the political leader's name in the popular song. Spice has done it, and you see all of this is happening. And in politics, I want to hear your opinion on that. Because it's happening all throughout the region. What's his name in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? As well. What's really going on? Can you break that down for us?
Well, we are living in a global village, and we are following everything that is happening in North America. And as you see, the rise of President Barack Obama and the fact that he used a lot of these social media, and you had Hollywood stars who were sort of building his campaign up. And ever since that time, our politicians seem to be more celebrities than they're politicians. So you need these celebrities like the Vibes Cartel and all of the major musicians that we have in the Caribbean and around the world to support our politicians. Because if they don't, it's like people are not going to vote for them. Remember now, Andrew Holness is called Brogat. That's what they have his name as. And I think it's coming from that ghetto culture. And he presents himself as this Brogad and, somebody. And that to me depicts a sort of criminal element. Not that he is criminal himself, but in order to get the votes and for the people, the constituents to see him as being cool, then they have to display that sort of behavior. They have to jive well with the young people because, again, the young people rally towards that culture. The Vibes Cartel, when you look at Vibes Cartel's concert, the other day he was supposed to be in Trinidad, and I was shocked that he got, how much did he get? Close to $100,000 that he didn't go get there. Can you imagine that they were paying him that pre-going to Trinidad, that he was able to make that amount of money? This is not because he's just getting that money. It's because people are supporting the music. and young people are the ones doing it. So I think I think we have to change the mentality of our young people. If they change, then our politicians will have to change.
Well, you know, there's an old song all the time you're talking.
Yes.
Marcia, I hope I don't expose myself with this
Yes.
song. But there's an old song I used to hear many years ago. I write the songs that make the young girls cry. I write the songs of love and special things. I write the songs. I write the songs. The power
Yes.
of music is unquestionable.
Correct.
I mean, I remember the days of the Beatles.
Mhm.
And the power they had. You remember when they had the entire world calling police pigs. So music is an extremely powerful element. But
Yes,
um,
but not only music, sports too. Because look at the other day after Usain Bolt, suffered the loss of huge sums of money from SSL. That's a sort of organization, a private entity in Jamaica who seemed to have stolen his money. He's gone missing, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then recently, because election is in the air, Prime Minister Andrew Holness decided to make him a cultural ambassador. So when he's doing that, he's also telling the public that, Usain Bolt is cool with me and vote for me because I love your sports personality, Usain Bolt, right? So
well,
sports and music really do have a lot of influence. Go ahead.
you lead me straight into the very next question, because I was going to ask you, in your
Yes.
opinion, who do you think is going to win the next election? And not only that, what do you think in terms of the diaspora voting, people who are not currently living in Jamaica, but are Jamaicans, of course?
I think that they should, because I think the Dominicans, for example, in the Dominican Republic, they allow their members of diaspora to vote. I think they should, because if it had not been for remittances in Jamaica, I don't know how Jamaica would survive. And I keep on questioning them when they're telling us about this economic prosperity. I am saying that had it not been for the diaspora, Jamaicans would be, I don't know how they
In
would
trouble.
survive. I don't know the date every day. So I think that based on that fact, I think members of the diaspora should be able to have a voice and to be able to vote. That's my opinion.
And in your opinion, who do you think is going to win the next election?
I
Of
think
course,
Andrew
we want-
Holness is going to win.
Really?
Because one, I'm not sure, and I hope that it surprises me. One, Andrew Holness he has mastered the science of politics and politicking. Not that he is an excellent leader, but he's an excellent politician, and he knows how to play the game. He knows how to message himself. He is almost synonymous now with PJ Patterson, and PJ Patterson had 3 terms in office because of the way, and I think he's using the same messaging as PJ Patterson. Remember now that PJ Patterson, in order to have been there for 3 terms, he played the race card against Edward Seaga, and Edward Seaga was a white man and he was an agent of the CIA. Now Andrew Holness is playing the same game against Mark Golding, who is this Jewish person of Jewish descent and who Jamaicans call white. And he is not from Yard, he's from the UK, and he should not be Jamaican, even though they know that he is Jamaican. And I'm asking them, does Mark Golding have a British accent? Doesn't he sound Jamaican to you? Yes, he might not be sounding like the guy from Riemann Jungle, but he is an upper middle class Jamaican. That is how Kingstonians speak, of that, sort of class. And they know that, but again, public perception and the messaging that he is not Jamaican, he's British. So I think that a lot of Jamaicans are buying that argument that he's there as a slave, a former slave master, or a representative of a former slave master, and they should vote for Andrew Holness. And I think, and then he's doing a lot of projects right now. You can see him building and opening new homes, and he's refurbishing hospitals and, building highways. So all of this sort of electioneering that he's doing and preparation for it, I think that is going to be hard for him to lose. And Mark Golding is a weak political communicator. I don't know how I guess if they'd had somebody the likes of a Damian Crawford who is able to take the message to the people, I think that he would be a much more credible opponent to Andrew Holness. But Mark Golding, apart from the fact that they're saying that he's white, he's not coming from that class. He doesn't have that sort of experience. He doesn't know how to jive with the Jamaican populace, and he's just an elite, a member of the elite, and he just does not know how to connect. He's trying, don't get me wrong, he's trying, and he has improved greatly, but I don't think that he is jiving well, and his message is resonating with the large.
But Mr. Tucker, I mean, we're always seeing him dancing. You know, it's good to see a white man. Well, what in Jamaica what we call white man, and he's dancing and doing all the moves.
Because that is how he's proving his Jamaicanness. That is what he's doing. He understands that there are people are saying that he's not Jamaican, so he has to listen to these music and he has to dance and hug them, and that is what he's doing. But he knows it's just like Barack Obama. If you speak to people who went to Harvard with him, they said that his cadence was not the same. The way how he spoke when he was running his campaign was not the same when he spoke at Harvard University, and that he would not really meet with the black people. He was not always associating himself with black people per se. He was more in the white elite environment because that is the class from which he hails. So the same thing with Mark Golding. I was listening, interesting you said that, because I was listening to Beverly Anderson Manley, who, Michael Manley. And she said that when Michael Manley lost the election in the 1980s, he was so hurt because his class had forsaken him. And he did everything in his power to realign himself back with his social and economic class. Mm-hmm. And that's why she ultimately left him, because he was not really, looking out for the interest of the working class, because he was in the 1970s, but he was betrayed, right? And because he was betrayed and then his own class left him, he said, no, he had to go back. He had to reunite himself with his class. And the same thing with Mark Golding. Mark Golding is not a typical Jamaican. He knows that, and I don't think he has any message to improve the lives of ordinary Jamaicans.
Wow. Well, I'm telling you, somebody said, the Brogad title in Jamaica, and then in Barbados you have the Antimia title, because they could these kinds of people could do all kinds of wrongs. Mm-hmm. Once you said they've found the art of politicking and electioneering, and
correct.
So it doesn't matter what they do, they have found a way to win. Now,
correct.
let me ask you something though. I hear you, Mr. Tucker. Mm-hmm. But I see that Mia Mottley, who is seemed to be loved in Jamaica, mm-hmm. which I'm going to ask you about that. She is in strong support of Mark Golding and the People's National Party. In fact, her brother Ilombe Mottley is married to someone within the PNP. Mm-hmm. So don't you think that will add some strength to Mark Golding, the People's National Party?
That's an interesting question, because she wasn't asked. She has never been asked to go there to do the support, to support him. She did go there to make pronounce a speech on Michael Manley's legacy, but I've not seen where they've asked her to go there and do that. They might ask her probably when it's
come on, the proximity. I mean, she comes to talk about Michael Manley, and an election is coming up very soon. Come on,
and she's also referred to another Michael Manley. People in the Caribbean see her as another Michael Manley, and that's why she came to light. That's why she came to the fore when people were saying that she's a Michael Manley. I said, who is this lady? I never heard of her before 2018. And then when I saw people, she's making a lot of speeches and all of that stuff. I said, who is this lady? And then the pandemic now, when she was talking about climate change and the IMF, I said, wow, this lady, and is not the real deal, when I heard her more talking about climate change. So when she pronounced a speech on Michael Manley, and I gave, I made a video on that, she was not speaking mostly about Michael Manley. She was talking about climate change, and she was promoting herself. She was not talking. She said very few things about Michael Manley's legacy. She was
why are we not surprised?
Climate change.
Which brings me then. This is very interesting. I didn't say it on the show. This gentleman said that she went to Jamaica to give a speech on Michael Manley, and she spoke mainly about herself and climate change.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you, sir, Mr. Tucker, because they call us all kinds of names. Mm-hmm. But I want to ask you, what is your perception
Mm-hmm.
of Mayor Mottley? I know that you just said that Jamaicans or Caribbean people, they're
Mm-hmm.
seeing that they think she's a new Michael Manley,
Mm-hmm.
reincarnate. But
Mm-hmm.
what is your view as a political commentator?
I see her as a globalist. The fact that she's on so many different organizations. In fact, she's on the committee of the IMF. She's on all of these major globalist institutions, and her rhetoric is empty. She's always saying the same thing. There's nothing about improving the lives of working class people. And give Michael Manley his credit. He might have changed in the 1990s when he came back to power, but in the 1970s, he was an advocate for improving the lives of working class people. You don't hear Mayor Mottley saying that. She just makes little statements here and there, but her main emphasis is on climate change. Now, my understanding of climate change, that it is going to be the largest transfer of wealth from the poorest person to the wealthiest. And that is what they're doing.
Right.
She's there to do that. And, so what can I say about her than that she's not the real deal? I'm sorry to say that. And, and I have studied her history, and I realized that even Arthur, was he a former Prime Minister of Barbados? I think he called her, I'm not using his direct words, but I think he called her a dictator before. Am I correct?
Yeah,
he used a very firm word, despot.
Despot. Absolutely. That's the word. That is the word I was searching for.
But what about her make you? So you have watched her in her speeches and so listen to her speeches.
And I've read her speeches also. I don't just listen to what she's saying. I also read what she's saying. So a lot of her speeches I have read and I have unpacked what she's saying.
Yes.
And you've unpacked, and you're saying that as a political commentator, you believe that you're agreeing with with the former Prime Minister Owen Arthur?
Well, based on what I'm seeing in Barbados, when I read, for example, I told you on when you came on my program last Friday that I was shocked that a politician in the Caribbean region could be co-opting all seats in her parliament. Remember now that the only time that happened in Jamaica was in 1983 when Michael Manley decided that he would not contest the election against Mr. Sierra. So Mr. Sierra got all the seats because Manley said that he was not going to contest the election because he thought that Edward Sierra was working for the CIA and he was not going to participate. But you had a Democratic Party in Barbados which participated in the election 2 times against Mayor Mottley, and she copped all of the Barbadian seats. That to me cannot be. And we're talking about a society that is so-called educated in a Jamaica that is probably not as educated as Barbados, and that would never have happened. Yes, we've had elections where you probably had 49 seats out of the 63 by 1 side, but you're not going to have all seats in the Jamaican Parliament be, controlled by one major political party. I don't think it will ever happen in Jamaica.
So what? Permit me, Mr. Dr. Ferdinand.
Go right ahead because this is very, very important.
Yeah, but let me ask you something. Why is it you are saying that you're a lecturer? You've lectured at Howard University of the West Indies. I mean, you are well accomplished, sir. My question to you is: you are hearing and reading about these 230 loves.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think she won them then? If you're saying you can't see it happening in a Barbados that with educated people and
any democracy, I can't see it happening. Yes.
Why? Tell me why. I'm interested. I really want to know your thoughts.
Because I think human beings are by nature oppositional. They have divergent views. For example, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. Do all Seventh-day Adventists believe in the same thing? No. We have a lot of debates in the church, and people might not believe in Ellen White, or some people might not believe in meat eating. So even though we have a certain doctrine and we say we're under a certain umbrella as Adventists, but people are going to oppose some of the doctrines and the beliefs of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. How is it then we have, and that's a religion, right? How is that we have a political structure in which we are suggesting that you should have divergent views, and you have one party controlling all the government, all the seats in the parliament. I can't see where that society is a civilized society. Well, I shouldn't say civilized. How can that society be a democratic society? It has to be a dictatorial society.
You know, you said something a few minutes ago that caught my attention. I wrote it down here. You said something about excellent politicians are not necessarily excellent leaders.
Yes.
I believe that was the phraseology.
Yes.
And I wanted to make this point. You know, in 2018, when she won the elections, 30 Love, we could probably debate the aspect of transparency when it comes to the elections, because I believe in 2018 there were questions raised concerning the registration of persons who were capable of voting. But then in 2022 we were technically in the throes of the pandemic.
Yes.
And the year that Barbados had its election was the same year the Bahamas had their election.
And Jamaica, I think too. No, well, yes,
Jamaica as well.
I think Jamaica as well.
Jamaica
But the reason that the Bahamas caught my attention was that, unlike Barbados, Mr. Ibram is his name, I think it is. He made provision for every single quarantined electoral person in the Bahamas to vote. That was not the case in Barbados, Andrew. And when one looks at the demographics of our 30 constituencies, some of which could be won or lost by 30 votes, 40 votes, 50 votes, we had 15,000 people in quarantine at the time.
Correct.
And so it was a disingenuous act, in my opinion, and it was scrupulous. And I'm using some kind words.
Yes,
they're words that, as a Pentecostal minister, I cannot use, and you would understand.
Correct.
You know. But it just goes to show that, even though we are educated and we are democratic, that there is a political capability within Mia Mottley to what is the word I'm looking for? To abuse an opportunity.
Yes.
If you understand what I'm saying, and
I
I'm
understand
listening so carefully to what you're saying.
Yeah, and I would say, in fairness to her, that all of the politicians during the pandemic exploited that opportunity, including Andrew Holness, because I think he won 49 of the 63 seats in Parliament. And the opposition was talking about the fact that he did things that they thought were unfair to them and stuff like that, because he was in power. But the fact is that Jamaica still did not have him. He still did not win all the seats in Parliament. He won most of them. His government won most of them, but at least you had some which were given to the opposition. The opposition won. But in Mia Mottley's Barbados, she did so twice. One before the pandemic, which was in 2018, and the other one during the pandemic. So it shows that there's no difference in what the pre-pandemic Mia Mottley was to the pandemic Mia Mottley, which also won all seats. So that is, to me, something that is unthinkable. I think when I read it, I had to read it 4 times to say, maybe you're not reading the right thing. Maybe your comprehension skills are poor, but it is so. And I'm happy that you guys are affirming that that is true.
Yeah, but so when we had our discussion, when you were, I was a guest on your show.
Yes.
You said something, and because of time, I wasn't asking the questions.
Yes.
But it stayed with me, Mr. Tucker. You said, her winning two times in a row and all seats tells me the type of person.
Yeah.
The type, and that's a very deep statement.
Yeah.
You said it is telling me the type of person that she is. And I'm segueing, Dr. Ferdy, into the cybercrime bill. But I want you to tell me what you were thinking, sir.
Well, during the pandemic, I was also following her a lot because Barbados was in the news. I thought the pandemic was something unprecedented in human history.
Yeah.
Unprecedented. I think that I would not want to revisit that sort of experience. But I think Barbados, and you guys can correct me, had one of the greatest restrictions in the Caribbean. I think
Yes.
at one time I read that you guys were in lockdown for a week or so without
It was
coming out.
long. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I
yes.
was like, that never happened in Jamaica. In fact, there was a fact there that Jamaicans, even though Jamaicans never went through that very stringent lockdown, people were on social media cursing out, what's his name, Andrew Holness, and calling him all sorts of names. And, and I'm saying Mia Mottley locked down her people for such a long time. That to me also says that she is a despot. Who would do that? In the Caribbean, where we have beaches, and we have a tropical climate.
Yes.
Why would we need to lock down our people when there's no winter and all of that stuff? I couldn't understand that for the life of me.
And so that's why you said there's a certain the 230 love is telling you something about her character and about the kind of person that she is. Well, let's segue, because you did a whole show on the cybercrime bill a year ago, Dr. Ferdinand, and I wasn't even aware of it. That he did a show.
I also, I don't know, and I don't want to say something that is not there. When I see her against the other prime ministers, whenever she's chairing a committee or the members of the Caribbean prime ministers are there with CARICOM, because she was the former chairwoman of CARICOM before Andrew Holness took over. There is a certain level of control, and I can see sometimes that there's a tension between she and Andrew Holness.
Yes, I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, it's unspoken, but I can see it on Andrew Holness's face, his facial expression, that he does not like the way how she controls the CARICOM, and the fact that she is the face of CARICOM, and she's almost like controlling these men. I don't want to say, maybe I'm saying too much.
But you mentioned something. You mentioned something, Andrew. I mean, you're Seventh-day Adventist. I'm Pentecostal, so we're a bit biblically based.
Yes.
I see her with a spirit, and pardon the expression, I see her with the spirit of Jezebel. Which is very intimidating, very controlling. She can walk into a room, and that's why very often when there are town hall meetings held and so on in Barbados, nobody says anything when she's sitting in the room, because she carries that, I guess some people would call it aura, but from our perspective, we call it spirit.
Yes.
And it is something that I have identified with her, and I'm glad that you drew the whole aspect as well. And pardon me, Marcia, because this has been burning in my system for the last several months, of her globalist commitment and not to her country. And we have criticized that here in Barbados over and over and over. She does not really care about the people. She is about a global agenda, and everything that's happening in Barbados really is being brought in from outside of our country.
Yes.
Almost like if we are guinea pigs. And I saw the pandemic in exactly the same light.
Yes. My question to you, though, is which politician in the world is not globalist and is working in the interest of their people? I don't see any. I'm sorry.
They're not. But what I want to bring the conversation. Thank you, Dr. Purdy, for that.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I just want to bring the conversation back to locally, although there's a global aspect of it as well. But I want to say to you, I want to ask you something. This wasn't one of the questions we sent to him, Dr.
That's
Ferdinand,
okay.
but,
That's all right. That's
but,
all right.
Based on what you said, it caused me to want to ask this question. We've noticed that your Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, we recognize, I was telling my husband that I recognize there's a conflict there. And I told him, I said, it's because this man is refusing to let her decide, rule him. In fact, there was a situation in her first term.
Andrew Holness is not much different. I think his style is different, but he's not much different from Mia Mottley. That
So
is my,
that's why they're rubbing.
the style
That's
is
what-
different. Yeah, but
Yes.
because she has her own style, and he
Right.
has a much more diplomatic style, but the
Right.
same agenda.
The same.
Yes.
Yes, I love it.
Yes.
The same agenda, because
Yes.
there was a meeting that was being held by the U.S. in Jamaica,
Yes.
and you
About
remember
Haiti.
that?
Mhm.
Yes, and you remember that Mayor Mottley says they should not be meeting in Jamaica. They should have been meeting with the whole CARICOM. And she then declares, I am not going to the meeting. And well, my memory of it is that Andrew Holness, because she was saying, well, like Barrow says, we're not, we won't be a satellite of the US. But then Andrew Holness says, well, but you weren't invited.
Yes.
So you remember that? So
But because that is the whole thing. She's against the Republicans in the US, but she's pro the Democratic Party. So she is pro democratic imperialism, but she's anti-Republican imperialism. Make that make sense to you? I don't know. So for example, the Democratic Party were abusing the Haitians, and they did some of the most egregious violations of civil rights as far as the Haitians are concerned. But she was okay with that, and she supported them. Now that Trump is in office, she will speak out against. But notice when she was speaking out against imperialism, Western imperialism, when Biden came back into power after Trump in 2021, he had the meeting of the Americas. Remember the meeting of the Americas in California, which she was invited to, and she went. And that was all about, I think it was against Venezuela. The meeting there, Venezuelans were not invited, and she attended, and she never spoke out against the fact that Venezuela was not invited. And one would have thought that she would be on Venezuela's side because they're against oppression, they're against imperialism. So Mia Mottley has this split personality, because she is at one end, she's, rejecting American imperialism on one side, yet she embraces it on another side.
Very
Remember in Kingston too that they had a meeting for the transitional government in Haiti. When you looked at the table in Kingston, she was the one directing everything, what Gonzalez was saying, what all of them were saying. She was the one actually telling them. No, the guy there from Guyana, he was at the time, he was the chairman of CARICOM, Ali. And she was the one actually telling him what to do. He was actually always looking at her, like he was getting the command from her. What should I do next? And she was there secretively telling him. So she wields a lot of power in the Caribbean. That's for sure.
Wow. And Andrew, this is why here in Barbados, and I believe you might have probably heard us take it up. I mean, we had a delegation that went to the let me make sure I get this right, Marcia, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights.
Yes.
In Washington, concerning our cybercrime bill, because in a real sense, that bill seeks, and I'm going to say as I think it seeks to silence voices of opposition to anything she's doing. I don't know how familiar you are with it. If you've read it, if you've gone through it. Marcia, I wasn't sure if just when you mentioned about the program we did, if it was you was speaking to or myself, because I believe we both would have done.
No, he did a program.
Okay, great.
But we weren't aware of it. He did it about a year ago.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Oh wow. And I mean, there is deep concern where this is concerned, because there's a sense in which the people in Barbados feel that their freedom of speech is being invaded. It is being opposed. It is being restricted. We have to have opposing voices. That's a part of democracy, as far as I'm concerned. I learn from the criticism of others, that type of thing. And but she seems to be intolerant of any opposition, especially when it's coming from the people. And I remember during the pandemic, she had an interview with Amanpour. And she said in that interview that they need to shut down the misinformation regarding the pandemic. I remember those words coming from her mouth. And to me, she was one of the greatest proponents of misinformation. Now, you've heard about the cybercrime bill.
Yes,
what are your thoughts relative to that, where we're concerned in Barbados?
And what I say on my podcast is that these politicians are not in charge. What we have in the Caribbean, Andrew Holness, Mia Mottley, they're all taking their command from Washington, from Brussels, right? So when you read the Patriot Act of Washington, D.C., when you read what came from the Justice Department in 2021 about misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, and do you know what malinformation is? Malinformation, according to the U.S. Defense, means that the information is correct, but it poses a threat to the agenda of the government. So if, for example, you are saying with all evidence that Mia Mottley did something and you have all the evidence against her, if that is going to put at jeopardy her agenda, whatever she's trying to do, that is malinformation and they will silence you. So I don't think it's just Mia Mottley. It is also being discussed in Jamaica as well, where the Prime Minister is against misinformation, disinformation. We are not here in the Caribbean malinformation, but that is also another thing we need to talk about. Malinformation, where the information is in fact true, with evidence, with sources, but it threatens the agenda of the reigning politicians.
Yeah. Well, actually, let me just say that with the first the first bill that was proposed, Mr. Tucker, it did say that even if the information was true,
right? Correct.
Yes,
right. Malinformation.
So ours had it. Ours had
yes,
it. And
it was in our bill.
And that's a trick. You know, when I heard the word malinformation, as a person who speaks Spanish, you'd have thought it was bad information, right? It's untrue. But in their sense, they have co-opted this word mal, which means in the sense that it is true, but it's bad for them. It's good for us to empower us, but it's bad for them because it is paralyzing their agenda.
So you have just given us the understanding of why that was in our cybercrime bill, and we had to march. We had 17 protest marches about that because it was saying that even if the information was true, and once it hurt somebody's feelings, once they were anxious, once but I you said something to me on the show, you said, Marcia, some of the things that's happening in Barbados, I don't see them happening in Jamaica because of the type of people. Explain what you're saying. Be free. It's okay. We won't stone you.
It will eventually happen. It will eventually happen. But I think of all the people in the Caribbean region, the Haitians and Jamaicans, and its history, were the most difficult people to deal with. And one of the things is that Barbados, over the years, has bridged the gap between the haves and the have-nots. In Jamaica and in Haiti, we have not. We're far from even accomplishing that feat. As a result of that, we still have that anger within us. So you have to be careful how you even step on a Jamaican toe, because they will come out for you. They'll come for you, right? But the Barbadian who has been acculturated more into Western culture and is seen to be more civilized and stuff like that is going to perhaps go with the narrative. Look at Americans. Look at what happened in America during the pandemic. I was shocked, ladies and gentlemen. I was shocked to see Americans actually agreed with what took place there. Yes. I thought that these were revolutionary people. We thought that they were this, the greatest democracy that the world has ever seen, and that they would have come out against this misinformation, disinformation campaign, and they couldn't. They didn't.
Yeah.
So the fact is, well, go ahead, Marcia.
No. I just want to, because I don't want to miss something that you said to me, which is important to Barbadians, and I'm trying. I want to keep it home.
To make it simple, I think the education system has.
Okay, that's what. Please.
That is what it has done, and it is sad to say that I'm an educator and I love education, and I really believe in education, but I think that we have come through centers of indoctrination. And remember now, even when you're doing a PhD, when I was going through PhD, you can't challenge the narrative. If you do, you're not going to get your PhD, because there are people there who are there as the standard bearers and the guardians of the academy. And if you don't write what they want you to write and believe in the narratives and the ideologies, you're just not going to come through. So I think that is what has happened to many of our people. Look at during the pandemic. the majority of people who opposed what was happening were people of the uneducated. Those were the ones who were not with all the PhDs and the masters and so on, because they sort of they just did not believe in the system. But the more we're educated, the more we go through the education system, the more we believe in the system, which is sad, but it's true.
Wow.
No. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Freddie.
No, I hear everything you're saying there, Andrew.
Yeah.
We went through the pandemic. I was one of those people who stood up against it. I held I was a part of several shows seeking to expose the truth. And I'm glad to say that truth has now become visible for everybody to see. And I still feel that there is a price that those persons who pushed it should be paying today for not only, I see many of the deaths and many of the inconveniences that people went through, that they were responsible for that and should be paying the price for that.
But I don't think in the Caribbean, though, I don't think that truth has come to light. Because I did write an article too that where was the University of the West Indies? Correct. No scientists there said anything. You had no dissident voices coming from the academy in the Caribbean. At least in North America, you had those, and in some other countries. But in the Caribbean, everybody was just silent. Nobody was. Yes. Well, I can say everybody because we were the ones. You had your program. Marcia had your program. But there were a few of us. So because of that, people still do not believe what you and I are saying. They still think that we are conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. And that brings me to the next question, Andrew, and that is in terms of the relationship of some of our leaders with in these international organizations like the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, the IMF, and so on, because it would seem that the relationship is such that things are being dictated to. I mean, it's almost like duress, especially when one considers the economic status of our countries, the need for loans, those kind of things. But should we as the people in the Caribbean be concerned with regards to our relationships with these organizations?
We should. But the first thing we have to do is to educate our people. And for example, I don't know how we're going to do that, because the campaign against the importance of these organizations is like it has defeated us. When I talk about the IMF, for example, in Jamaica, and even though they're suffering from the most, I don't know if you know that Jamaica received the most austere IMF program in the history of the IMF. In the history of the IMF. And yet still, when you speak to Jamaicans, we have to pay it on our debt. And they will tell you that we are progressing, we're moving forward because of the IMF. The same thing they will tell you because that we had to do what we had to do during the pandemic, and the World Health Organization helped us. So the campaign is so strong that it is going to be very difficult to we have to first educate our people. We have to uncondition their minds, deprogram them, in other words, to think in a different way.
Yeah. And are you finished, Dr.
No, I was just wondering in his thinking, how can we do that in terms of the re-educational aspect?
I think we have to take our children out of the schools, and we have to homeschool them. We have to also the church schools that we used to have. We have to now form schools in the church and other communities and other community schools, because if we're going to depend on the public school system to educate our children, they're not. Because remember that the agenda comes from them, the same people. The curriculum comes from them, so they would have been indoctrinated, and they're not going to listen to us.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. Guys, we're going to open up the lines. You tell me when you're ready to go to bed, Mr. Tucker, because
I can be here all night.
Oh my goodness. I tell you, the illumination, these kinds of shows we've been having, guys, I tell you, there's an unseen hand that is directing us.
That's right. That's right.
I didn't know him. I just got that email from you. Right?
Yes.
And last week or week before, and we're here today. Now, somebody has a question here, and I want my husband. We have Dave in so many directions. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it, but I want to tell you something. We have questions for you. Okay.
Mhm.
Now we notice, Mr.
Mhm.
Tucker, that our prime minister,
Mhm.
when she goes like to the UN or anything,
Yes.
even if there is our first celebration after we
Yes.
became a republic,
Mhm.
our prime minister did not wear the badge, the Barbados,
Yes.
her
The
flag.
flag.
Yes.
What she did, she was wearing she wears
Sustainable
the
Development Goals pin.
sustainable
Mhm.
development
The
goals, the
WEF.
UN.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and
The
when
yes.
she's when you think of the UN,
Mhm.
when a leader goes to the UN and they
Mhm.
come up to that, they step
Mhm.
up to that podium to speak.
Mhm. Yes.
Usually on the left breast is
Yes.
that tiny flag,
Yes.
regardless of the country. When
Mhm.
we went through all of those countries and all of those leaders, the only person without a flag
Mhm.
on their left breast, and you can look at it when we're done, is the
Yes.
Prime Minister of Barbados.
Yes.
And she's not without anything there. She has something there. There was a
Yes.
time, I think there are a couple of times she had nothing there. But
Mhm.
majority of the times when she has something, it is the brooch of the sustainable development
Development
goals of the
goals.
UN.
Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
have noticed that two of our senators here, female senators, they've started to wear it. What
Mhm.
should we read into something like that?
Well, again, as you said, I think that you've answered your question. The globalist agenda that they
Globalist
are
agenda.
keen.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not about
Yeah.
following sovereign the rights and the laws of our sovereign states. They are more committed to achieving the agendas of the United Nations and the WEF and all of these globalist institutions. And let me say something. It was in 2005 when I started listening to some documentaries by a doctor who, well, he's actually a scientist, but he is now like a political commentator himself, Dr. Walter White. And he is a South African, and he presented many documentaries because he and his wife, their parents were also globalists, and they were involved in many of these top organizations with secretive documents. So they
Mhm.
have in their hands secretive documents, and when they became Christians, they were now able to see the agenda of these globalists. And he has presented many documentaries, including on the United Nations, which I was shocked in 2004 that, wow, these people are not for us. In fact, I wanted to work for the United Nations before 2004. I
Mhm.
wanted to be like an international lawyer. And then when I saw these things happening, I said, but these people are not for the interest of humanity. They're there to destroy humanity. And that is what the Mia Motleys are about. But when during that time to that inauguration of the Republic, weren't they talking about, you know, living in a digital era? There was something about Mia Motley and living like in a digital world.
Yes,
Do you
sir.
remember that? Yeah, so
Yes,
I think
sir.
that is our agenda. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And for the Republic, I don't know. I know right now they're having lots of talks in Jamaica about it and so on. At least they are pretending to do that. Here in
Yes.
Barbados, there was nothing. She just
Yes.
got up and did it on her own.
Correct. Correct. In Jamaica, you can't do that. And that's the whole thing that in Jamaica, it's not going to be. I think there are different laws, so give Barbados, to be fair to Barbados, I think our laws are different. I can't explain to you, but they've said that the way in which it is done, we have to have like 2/3 of the vote in parliament and all of that. And I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon in Jamaica. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah,
And there are lots,
but
and there, I think
normally,
there are
no,
lots more discussions about it also, and the pros and the cons
but
of that.
but Mr. Tucker,
Mhm.
what I think a lot of times people don't understand our situation,
Yes.
Dr. Ferdinand.
Yes.
Remember that normally you would have had to do that in
Yes.
Parliament and have that kind of the 2/3 and so on. But
Okay.
remember she had all the seats.
Right. That's the whole thing.
So then one would have thought, so it's not that our laws are different, sir.
Right.
It is
But
that
you had
our
all the
situation,
seats.
yes,
Hmm.
and she did not think that it would be good to at least do a referendum, let the
Hmm.
people decide. I mean, she
Right.
just went ahead and
Right.
did so. But
But interestingly to know that, do you know who is the head who is chairing our? I sent you a letter, a Gleaner article, who is chairing ours, the Reform Committee in Jamaica to become a republic? Marlene Malahou Fort, who is
yes,
also a young global leader of the WEF. She's the one, and she is aggressive. When I say she's not aggressive in the sense that she's violent, she's very sophisticated, but she pretends as if she knows it all. And I saw her at the University of the West Indies speaking to former Prime Minister like Bruce Golding's and PJ Patterson's, and the way in which she was pushing down her ideologies down their throats as if she was the Miss Know-It-All. I was fascinated with her, her gall, her sort of audacity. So I think everywhere we turn, you have these people who are heading the WEF people and the UN people and the Sustainable Development people. They're all over the Caribbean, and they're chairing these boards. They're chairing these committees.
Wow. So we need to be, someone is reminding us, two persons are reminding us, Dr. Ferdinand, to let him know that we were the first to have an embassy in the metaverse. You remember that? We were
in the where? In the where?
In the metaverse.
In the metaverse. That's what I was trying to look for. I was trying not the digital. It's the metaverse. I was correct. Thank you for that correction.
Did you say Dr. Walter Banks?
Veit. The V-E, it's actually German, V-E-I-T-H. It's V, probably would call it in English. Yeah, V-E-I-T-H, right. And okay, he's president. Right. He has the onslaught, the total onslaught. I think everybody should go. I think it's on YouTube and watch those documentaries. Wow, aren't they so thorough? And he was the one who actually, and I went and I did a lot of reading because of his documentaries. I want to find out, is he speaking the truth, And I went and I did my own research, and I said, this guy is brilliant.
Yeah. Yes. Wow. You talk about the aspect of the digital control.
Yes.
I believe right now our central bank is working on a digital currency. As a matter of fact, I think the United States, the current administration, I believe, pulled back from all of that. If my information serves me correctly.
Yes, that's the name, Professor Walter Veit. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think they pulled back from that whole aspect of digital, of going with the central bank digital currency. But we're developing one here. And of course, as I'm sure you would know, but very often, sometimes it's difficult, as you say, to convince people of the truth about what we know.
Yeah.
And that is that in moving to this digital currency, that is another aspect of dictatorial processes and practices, because then you have a limited distance. You can use your card or you can use your account, because it's now digital. They can control, they can set a limit on the amounts, what it's spent on, how far you can use it, which of course now brings us to this concept of 15-minute cities, which is being driven by the globalists again. But people think we're talking gibberish.
They do. They do. Yeah. I think what has happened, we are spoiled in the Caribbean and in the United States of America also. I think we've grown up to a large extent with a lot of freedoms. We have had our problems, but one of the things about the Caribbean, including Jamaica, people chat and they would talk their minds and they could say anything they want to say. And now we find that we are being controlled, and it's very difficult for us to conceptualize that our leaders want to control us, and that is the point. I keep on talking on my channel that many people see the criminals as the Vibes cartels and the gunman in Kingston. However, they don't see our well-dressed politicians who are well-spoken, who have been to great schools like Harvard and Oxford, and the University of London or wherever. They don't see our politicians as in any way criminals, and that they're also engaged in criminal activities, including the suppression of our rights, the violation of our rights. These are criminal activities. It's very difficult for citizens to see that.
Yeah. I want to ask you something, that when you were speaking of the cybercrime bill, because your audience on YouTube, is it primarily Jamaicans?
Well, I have a few Barbadians, and I did get a few comments, but Barbadians, when they responded to my videos, they more, again, in the Caribbean, were so narrow-minded in terms of, oh, you're Jamaican, oh, your country is not as progressive as ours. So those are the comments that you'll get, think about your country, focus on your country, and don't look at Barbados, we have a better economy than you have, and all of this sort of nonsense. Yeah, but I do have a few subscribers who have responded intelligently.
I want you to hear what he just said, Barbadians, because that is the same thing they started with me.
Mhm.
But every night we have over, like tonight we go up to 1,000 people watching live
Great.
and so on. And I think that people are now beginning to realize that I actually do care about the country, because they used to say, "Oh, go and talk about Jamaica. Jamaica is not as progressive as Barbados.
Correct.
Oh, you have a lot of crime. Oh, our
Correct.
education is thing." And
Better,
so on.
absolutely.
And did you hear what he said when he started to talk about the cybercrime bill and
Mhm.
about Mia Mottley? That
Mhm.
Barbadians will go on there and say the same thing to him.
Correct.
And I want people to know, as you're getting ready to call in, I want people to know that this gentleman you see here, I've never met him in real life.
Yeah.
I met him online for the first time last week. Was it Thursday?
Friday. Yeah, Friday.
Last week, Friday, a
Mhm.
couple days ago.
Mhm.
And he reached out to me and invited
Yeah.
me to come on his program to have a
Mhm.
discussion with me. And
Mhm.
basically, Dr. Ferdinand, he is saying, he did share some insights with us. But it's basically a lot of great insights. But he's basically saying the same thing we're saying
Yeah,
about
yeah,
Mia Mottley. So it's not that
yep.
nobody here hates her. It
Well,
is
the reason I invited you on my program is because of your ideas. I saw you on the St. Vincent Times program, right? And I
Yes.
listened to you and I said, but this lady knows what she's talking. Because what we see from Africa to the Caribbean to Latin America to North America, Black Americans, people are enamored by Mia Mottley. The Africans are the same. From Kenya to Ghana, they are enamored by her. So what you and I are saying is like, people are going to watch us. But when they see videos about her and her rhetoric about climate change and social justice, everybody's clicking on her. She's the new, whatever, Dr. Martin Luther King, of
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
You know.
What is interesting for me, Andrew, and I'm meeting you for the first time.
Yes.
I mean, period, first time, period.
Yes, absolutely.
Is to hear the commonality of thought,
Yeah.
and the
Truth.
shared information, the shared thought,
Yes.
that you
Yes.
have, that I have promoted whenever I've spoken, because I saw through the
Yes.
pandemic. I have known Mia Mottley. I knew her mother, I knew her father, I knew her,
Yes.
well, as a little child. I knew the father, but her brother, I sold her brother. Well, I was a part of the sale of a brother to a vehicle for a brother. I have some involvement from that aspect. Her mother, I as a young child, I used to like her mother quite a lot, and so I've seen that aspect of development. But to be honest, to see what I used to see and see what I see now, it's like, and I hate to put it this way, it's almost like a demonic transition, from a person who I used to look to and to some degree admire. She is a brilliant speaker.
She
You know,
is.
my mother used to tell me, you have to give Jack his jacket. Yes, brilliant speaker. But these words that you spoke tonight have resonated with me, and I want Barbadians to hear this clearly. An
Yes.
excellent politician does
Yes.
not necessarily mean an excellent
It's a
leader.
leader.
Yes.
Excellent.
And I
Wait,
juxtapose that on my program with the same way an excellent educator is not synonymous with an excellent teacher. They are distinct. A teacher can prepare students for exams and passing exams, and she's a good teacher because all the students pass their CXCs, right? But is she or he a good educator in terms of empowering students for life and to develop critical thinking process and all of that? These are two distinct, but people always think, oh, to be a good educator is the same thing as being a good teacher. And the same thing with a politician and a leader.
yes. We have a caller on the line. Good night, caller. Welcome to the Marcia Week show. Great to have you. Go right ahead.
Good night to Marcia, Barbados, and all of the Caribbean people listening to my voice. I'm
Y-
calling in from Jamaica, Marcia, your hometown.
You're in Jamaica
Oh,
right now.
wow. Welcome.
Yes, I'm in Jamaica right now.
You're
Can
a
you turn up the
Bajan.
volume? Can you turn up the volume a little?
Turn up the volume. Can you speak up a little bit more, sir?
Yeah, my volume is up to all, yes?
Okay, right. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, my volume is up to all.
Yes, go
Okay,
right
I
ahead.
have a question. Yeah, I have a question to your guest. Barbados has become a republic, and the government of the day is finding it hard to get the constitution together. Can you help us understand why? I mean, I have a lot of whys, but as a political expert as you are, can you help me understand why and why is it taking so long to get it done, please?
Could you? I didn't hear him well. Could you
Yeah,
guys?
let me explain. So thank you. This is a great question, caller. What has
Yes.
happened, Mr. Tucker? Since we've been a republic, this is
Mhm.
now about 5 years.
Mhm.
We don't have a Republican constitution, not
Yes.
up until
Although
this
I
day.
read that. Yes.
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 So he's saying to you,
Yes.
you're looking in, you're outside looking in, and
Yes.
as a political commentator, what is the reasoning that you what reasoning would you give to for that?
Well, what I said is, and I have said on my program, is that they have to dress up authoritarianism in a goodly garb, goodly robe. So they are introducing authoritarianism as a state. However, they have to tell us that they're actually giving us a republic where we have
Mhm.
rights. In fact, they're taking away our rights. So everything that they say they're doing is the complete opposite. And that is why they are doing what they're doing. So a republic without a constitution, but you're free. How does that work? But then Barbadians are the ones who have to think and say, no, this is a faux republic. It's not real. But are they saying that? That's how I see it. That they have dressed up an authoritarian state looking like a republic, but it is not.
Hmm.
Wow,
Agreed.
that
Agreed.
is deep. Thank
Agreed.
you, caller. Thank you, caller.
And
We
it's
have
brilliant. That is a
Yeah.
brilliant strategy, isn't it?
wow.
Yes.
Can you just expound on that? Listen, there's a reason I have you repeating things. Okay.
Yes.
I love my Barbadian people, and I can tell you. Let me tell you something. They are just as feisty, and
Mm-hmm.
just as warlike, and just
Mm-hmm.
as passionate as Jamaicans. But as you rightly said, the education kind of taken a lot of that out of us.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to just say that one more time. What you just said. The reason we do not, you believe we do not have the Republican Constitution. Say that again, sir.
Yes,
Please.
what I'm saying is that they it's going to be very difficult for them to tell us that they're introducing to us an authoritarian state, a state in which all you have is a despotic state in essence. So they have to dress it up in the garb, in the robe of a republic, which is they are telling us that it's a true state, that it's a free state, but it is in fact an authoritarian state. And that is a great strategy because many people will accept it as such. Remember, when you read what happened in Hitler's Germany, Hitler didn't come on the scene and say that I'm a dictator and I'm going to take over Germany and I'm going to kill the Jews. He came as one who was going to stand up for the rights of Germans. And remember the whole matter of their having to pay reparations and all of that stuff. So he was standing up and we're going to be patriotic. And that's exactly what they're doing at the moment.
Wow.
So they've dressed up an authoritarian state in the robe or in the garb of a state that espouses freedom.
And because we don't have the Republican Constitution.
No.
Let's go to this caller. Caller, welcome to the Marcia Week Show.
Good evening, Marcia, and to your guest.
Yes, good evening, sir. Let me just make sure our panelists can you hear him?
We
Mr.
can
Tucker?
hear, but it's a bit soft.
Yes.
It's soft. Okay.
The next time I try to wear a headset too.
Yes.
so I can
Okay.
hear.
All right. So just speak as loudly as you can, sir. We would love to hear you.
Okay, well, I came into the show a bit late, so I just picked up 15 minutes ago, and where I picked up was your guest speaking on the apparent struggles between me and Mottley and Dr. Thompson. Oh God. I said it's my favorite prime minister. The West Indies, Dr. Holness. I follow him a lot. Excuse me. And I watched the development of Jamaica. The the massive job he's doing, incredible job. The billions of dollars he's been able to collect for the investors. And Jamaica is on a roll. And when I think of Barbados, of course, let me say this. I used to live in Jamaica between 1959 and 1962. I don't want to go on long about it, but essentially there's a little tension between the Barbadians and the Jamaicans through Norman Manley and Sir Grant Lee. The Jamaicans felt, you had the Beijing, this and that, and you got that little thing going on, this little between the Barbadians and the Jamaicans and whatnot and so forth, between Sir Grant Lee, who should be leading West Indian Federation, and all of that. But I put that aside. But when you think of Dr. Holmes and what he's presiding over, I mean, Mottley were international forays. I'm not impressed with what she's saying because essentially she's just using hackneyed phrases. And I don't think she's a brilliant speaker, as far as I'm concerned. It's just a tone, but there's no substance. Let's put that aside. The question here, where with me Mottley is concerned, is I've never heard any ideology. Is she a free marketer? Does she believe in socialism? Does she believe in capitalism? What is her ideology? She's never spelled out any philosophical orientation. I've never heard anything of substance coming from her. I don't know why where the Barbadians, I feel. Listen, I'm 86 years old, and I went around long in all kind of places, hear all kind of intellects and whatever. She does not rate. She does not rate, in my opinion. What brilliant speaker is she? Where is the pause? There's no exceptional pause. She used hackneyed phrases. She's making statements that I heard as a 20-year-old during the colonization process with Kasabubu and Jomo Kenyatta. The language that we used to speak as a 20-year-old, she's using. I've heard that before. There's nothing creative about her. I can tell you that because I went around long. I went around long. So therefore, just get rid of that foolishness. Whether she's like an Africa or not, because she's saying what the Africans want to hear, anti-imperialist talk. And she's presiding over a country that is virtually bankrupt. We are virtually bankrupt. And the other point, this is the last point I'll make. You're talking, your guest was, I think he was speaking about where our foreign policy lies. Is it with the Americans? Is it with the Chinese? Is it with the Venezuelans? Is it with the Cubans? A whole mess of confusion that she's going to run us into trouble because she has no foreign policy, fixed foreign policy orientation. She's all over the place. I think I said enough there. Yes. I hope somebody can pick up and expand on the things that we're saying.
Yes, sir. Thank you for calling. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Tucker, hang on. I think you turned up your volume, and so we're getting a feedback. So whatever you're doing, go back to what you were originally. Okay, I'm going to open your mic now.
Should I turn it down?
Yes. Okay. So continue now. Yes, this is good now.
Good. Now, what I was saying, I have to agree with the speaker. I think she has the gift of gab. That is what she has.
Yes, I really have to agree.
What is happening is that, I don't think she is as widely read as people like, as he's saying, the Grantley Adams and the Errol Borers and the Michael Mandes, the politicians of yesteryear. They were very extensively read. They read a lot, and because of that, they would share with us, profound philosophies. When you listen to her, it's empty speech, but she is talking the narrative of WEF and the United Nations and that agenda, which is subtly infused in her speech, but she's really not saying anything. That's why when she had the thing on Michael Manley, it was boring. It was more talking about herself and the agenda of climate change, but it amounted to nothing about Michael Manley and what he stood for in the decades of the 70s and the 1990s.
You know,
Wow.
it's interesting, and I would have to, I think we would call it recant, Andrew,
Yes,
in
yes.
our context. I would have to recant of my statement because, you know, when I do get the time, and to be honest with you, I don't listen to many of her speeches.
Hmm.
She has the aura there,
She
but
does.
the content is really, I
Correct.
guess, what is the issue.
Hmm.
And you know, I can't help but agree with the caller
Hmm.
with regards to that. Her
Hmm.
content really
Is not there.
doesn't say
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. Because, you know, for example, when she pronounced a speech on Michael Manley, one of my criticisms was, shouldn't you have read one or two of his books to at least make some quotations from what he said? It was just ordinary. She didn't really say anything about his philosophies. She only said
Wow.
she loved his philosophies. She knew the man. He used to visit her home, but there was nothing that she left that you could say, wow, it resonates with me. It reminds me about Michael Mann. Nothing.
Nothing. Wow. We have a caller on the line. Mr. Tucker. Caller, welcome to the Marcia Week show. Go right
Yes,
ahead.
yes, good day. Good day
And
to
you're
the panel
calling
as
from the
well.
diaspora. You're calling from Canada. Go right ahead.
Yes, yes. Is the gentleman that is there with you, is he from Jamaica?
Yeah.
Yes, he's Jamaican
Oh,
born. Yes.
phenomenal, phenomenal. The reason I'm saying that is because I saw the Prime Minister speaking to, she didn't say it in these words, but what she's trying to say is almost like having the CARICOM more or less monitor to put in my words, police discourse between the Caribbean countries. And the reason I'm saying that before I say what I'm going to say is that the gentleman, I'm not sure his name. What's your name again, sir?
Andrew.
Andrew.
Yes.
Andrew, it's as if myself and Andrew were talking. I've never met him before. What scientists don't even understand about the black race is that there's something mystical about us that we don't need Facebook and internet and all that sort of stuff to communicate, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that what they meaning persons, whether in the Caribbean or external, cannot understand is that they can't really control the minds of the people. They can do it for a time, but it's not going to be as potent as they would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And what I am seeing here, or I should say hearing, coming from this gentleman, Andrew, is that the Caribbean is actually waking up. And
Yeah.
I believe the reason why everything that was done so fast,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are thinking that it is manic. It is not that it was manic to have a quick republic and a quick this and a quick that and a quick the third, but
Mm-hmm.
that they had to fulfill all of those ideas that were done behind the scene, because they didn't just start when they came to office.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true.
Ideas
That's
were
true.
probably in.
That's
You're
true.
saying something?
No, go right ahead, caller. Go right ahead.
Oh, I'm saying that those ideas were cemented long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously had to be put into effect quickly to catch traction on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna end with this one. The Afrocentric Bank is not necessarily saying with its mouth that I am for the cybercrime bill, but it just having an entity or existing as who it is and what it is will obviously lend financial support to such things. Why? Because it joins or aligns with I call it digital uniformity.
Mhm.
And what digital uniformity looks like for them is literally control throughout the Caribbean.
Okay.
And that is right. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you so much,
For now.
caller. Thank you. Let's hear the comment from Mr. Tucker about any of what the caller anything the caller mentioned.
Yeah, well, as he said, that this is not happening overnight. I think that this has been in the works, in the pipeline for years. I think one of the reasons why they had the lockdowns, however, was the lockdown our minds. So it was a physical lockdown. It was also a mental lockdown. So we
Yes,
could not
yes.
meet together and exchange ideas to fight against them. And that is why they alienated us from each other. But one of the things I must disagree with the caller, however, I think that they are winning the war in the sense that it's a battle of the mind. And as we're saying, because many of our brothers and sisters are not seeing the truth, they're not seeing what we're saying, it means that they are winning the war. It's not a physical war right now. It's a spiritual,
it's a spiritual and mental war.
And that is what, and they're winning in from those two perspectives.
Yes.
Unfortunately, but that's the truth.
Yes, yes. And you know, someone is saying here, I don't know if you know this fact about Barbados, Mr. Tucker, that our prime minister, you know, was in talks with the IMF. In fact, we have facts, we have records to prove there were people that from the IMF was visiting Barbados, but not coming to the present government at the time. They were meeting with the opposition, which was Mia Mottley's party. And so she and her party, they were in talks with the IMF before she got into power. So
because she wasn't on a committee of the IMF. That's what I found interesting too.
Yes.
How was Mia Mottley on an IMF committee, yet is presiding over a fund? I mean, as in government, I couldn't understand that. I did a program. Yeah. It was sort of.
Repeat what you just said. Repeat.
She was on the committee of the IMF.
Yes.
Meanwhile, she was negotiating with the IMF for a loan agreement with Barbados. I couldn't understand that, and I did a program, a video on that too, about her and her connections with the IMF.
Wow.
I just can't understand, and that is why when I present, I thought that when I spoke about the IMF, that it would have resonated with Jamaicans, because we are going through the most austere, even more austere than what Barbados has. Jamaica has the most austere IMF program in the history of the IMF. Yet still, in Jamaica, we are prodding along the IMF. Weird, isn't it?
Very weird. And that they would have been, as you said, she's on a committee, and so she's basically deciding on a loan for herself. I mean, the whole thing.
Conflict of interest. I mean, Marcia, I was doing some research recently. All of this helps me to understand why Barbados stands at number 28, I think it is, in the corruption index of the world out of 196 countries. We're number 28. And I can't remember our position, Andrew, relating to the Caribbean, but it's very high. I think it's like either first or second, somewhere in that area.
I thought you guys were the lowest. I thought that when I read the last, I thought you guys were really up there, ranking higher, much higher than Jamaica ranks.
In terms of corruption? Yeah, I'm not sure where Jamaica is, but I know Barbados is either 26 or 28.
We're in the 50s. I think we're in the 50s, if I'm not lying. Or 60s.
Yes.
But you know, what you being here on this program, what's happening is that it's validating a lot of people. You don't even understand your very presence here, sir.
Yep.
And this miraculous connection, we see it as miraculous. As you said, the battle is spiritual and it's mental. And I hope that people are listening, and that's for whatever religion you're from. Hear it through those lenses, that, you know, because I'm not going to try to just hear it.
Yeah.
It is spiritual. Can you, while we're waiting on a caller, can you go over, talk about that, about the mental and the spiritual battle that we're dealing with?
Yes, well, first of all, we saw that during the pandemic. We have never seen in Western cultures a campaign that was so relenting and so consistent and so fierce as we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic. I have seen doctors such as Dr. Paul Marrick of the United, well, he's a South African doctor who resides in the United States, one of the top doctors in the world. And he was unceremoniously removed from his hospital because he wanted to use a certain medication, which the hospital didn't allow him to use. And they fired him. And do you know, they didn't only fire him, but they used the courts against him and came up with some false accusations against his legacy as a doctor. And they got testimonies, false testimonies from people to lie on the doctor. The doctor, who is in his 60s, cried on a live program, that, like, when he went on a live program, the big, so brilliant doctor, one of the best in the world, cried because of what he experienced. So when you look at that, and to see that many doctors who were dissident voices are now out of jobs, we can see that to some extent we've lost the battle. And we have to blame ourselves. We shouldn't be blaming Mia Mottley. Mia Mottley and Andrew Honus and all of these people ought not to be blamed. We, the citizens, should be blamed, because if more of us, as you're saying, Marcia, went out on the streets and we protested against what they were doing, they would have to stop. But many of us
just did not do that.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah. You know, that's why I'm really glad, Andrew, to see. I don't know if you've been following it recently. Dr. McCullough has been testifying before the U.S. Congress, and you know, that is one place where the truth is coming out. The Supreme Court ruling against Pfizer, and the removal of all the redacted information. And I'm not saying that necessarily to focus on the pandemic, but to show how they were able to manipulate the system to the point where the misinformation, and they tell us about misinformation, the misinformation was seen as gospel truth. But now we are seeing from what has been revealed to us, and I thank God, you know, I really don't get into what people feel about any individual.
Yes.
Is that a call you have, Marcia?
Yes, I have a call.
Yes,
Thank you
right
so
ahead.
much.
Yes.
A caller, because this is your time, so we want to make sure that you get your time. So caller, go right ahead. Thank you for calling the Marcia Week Show. Go right ahead, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Marcia, Dr. Nichols, and I think it is Dr. Tucker.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your enlightening discussion tonight. I want to ask you a few questions, short questions really. Can you identify a definitive vision and political philosophy amongst Caribbean political leaders? That's one. And two, how can we reverse this situation and establish a true people's democracy? Because I think the Barbados and the Caribbean, we are in a deep and perplexing crisis. So how can we reverse that? And secondly, thirdly, finally, how effective do you think civil disobedience can be in ending the slide towards total dictatorship?
Yes. Thank you so much, caller. Thank you. And I was trying to write down. I hope the others are writing as well, so you can listen for your answers. Thank you so much, caller, for calling. Mr. Newton, I know that's you.
I did.
Thank you. Yes. Right. So yes, go ahead, Mr. Tucker. He's asking about can you identify any vision or policy or philosophy of our Caribbean leaders?
Yeah.
You know, when I talk on my program, I often tell my listeners that unfortunately, we're living in a global village. We're living in a global community. And that has been the reality for many years. I think that reality was cemented during the pandemic. And I think all of the major agenda goals were ticked off during that health emergency period. I think that was a time that we should have stood up against what we saw was happening, and many of us didn't. As a result of that, I don't know, and I don't want to be pessimistic. I think that they won the battle. How are we going to now? Maybe you and I, if we can re-educate the people, but I think that because of social media and the fact that the social media are even working against us. You and I can't even put up a video on YouTube. It's going to be flagged because of misinformation. So we can't put our truth, unadulterated truth out there anymore. So because as a result of that, most of our people are misinformed, and we have to begin with truth first. And only with truth can we wage a war against the system. And right now we have just a lot of half-truths and lies out there. So how are we going to, transcend that?
So that's answering his second question, that how to reverse that. We're going to need to continue to educate the people.
Yes, yes.
Keep educating as we're doing now, and as you do on your show, which we're going to get you to give us the location.
And Marcy, not to interrupt, but how can we as a small community develop our own platforms that can go global? Because like YouTube, we are not going to be able to do that, to compete with these people, and that is where the whole battle lies. That we just don't have the money, we don't have the wherewithal to develop these infrastructures as these people have.
Yes. The next question that he has is, how effective is civil disobedience? That's a big question. He's a Bajan. You see what I told you, that don't you think that Bajans, are not, and he's educated, but you see, over time, people begin to get in touch with who their true DNA of who they really are. And he's asking about civil disobedience. How effective is that?
Yes, it is effective. And I think if we had decided that I'm not going to be locked down, the Haitians, for example, during the pandemic, I was reading a story in Spanish coming out of Haiti. And the people said, we are not going to be locked down because nobody's going to feed us. So if we are going to be locked down, we have to work. And the people went out and they worked. Do you know that they have one of the lowest death rates, in the pandemic, as a result of the pandemic in the world? Haiti, the poorest country in the world, because they went out and they were interacting with nature and they did what they normally did. They weren't in fear as many of us were, and they weren't controlled by the
Yes, one second.
Yes, I think Andrew. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Campbell.
Dr. who?
Dr. Campbell.
No, I don't know.
The caller is back.
Okay.
The caller is
back.
back.
The caller's back. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Caller, good night. Thank you for calling the Marcia Week Show. Go right ahead, please.
Good night. Good night, Mrs. Weeks.
Yes.
And
Tucker.
Yes, I'm Mr. Tucker. Dr. Tucker. Very strong. So this is how we normally hear it coming through. I don't know what's the difference now. Go right ahead.
It's very clear.
Good night, Ms. Weeks, and the members of the cast.
Yes.
This is, I just need to tell you all that there's always an example in life for people to see and know. You were asking how we're going to get where we're supposed to be and when we're supposed to be. We already have an example. Our example as Black people is Traore.
I knew he was going to say that.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's Traore.
Yeah.
He is God's example to Black people. He's directly from Africa. If you look back into life, they told us, Marcus Garvey told us to look to the east for the coming of a king. We looked to the east and we saw a king and we refused to accept him, his imperial majesty. Now, in this time, our example is Traore. Traore is a perfect example of all these philosophy and all the life examples that we need to know. We just need to listen and look to Traore and have faith in God. And we see what life is there for we as Black people. Have a nice night.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for calling. Mr. Tucker, are you're Dr. Tucker?
No, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker, yes. Go. Any comments on that?
Well, I would say that I did present also a video on Traore and say that if our leaders are in fact wanting to lead like Traore, they would disassociate themselves from the IMF and not for the globalist agenda. However, we are still not sure who is ruling Traore. It's still not clear who controls him behind the scenes. So I would say put not your trust in any man, because right now our world is so tainted and it is so complex in terms of these organizations that we do not know who controls who. We're living a different era. Another thing I say, I don't get into this race thing, this whole matter of black people and white people. I tell people about, in Europe, people, you have the British, you have the Italians, you have the Germans, and they don't like each other. We are the ones who think that, they're all white people and they're on the same agenda and they have the same. When you look at North America, when the British went there and afterwards the Germans and the Irish, they all fought against each other. Yes, they unite against African people and those of us of African descent, but it doesn't mean, therefore, that they are united. And as a people, I don't think black people will also ever, people of the same hue will ever be united. We unite around the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Mm-hmm. We unite around an agenda, not around nationality, really, or, it's about values and truth, and,
yes.
and that's what we and our spiritual, goals,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
wow.
that's my take.
Wow. Well, somebody's asking here for your YouTube, and I'm actually trying to get the handle up, so I can, we can get it there, and Dave to put it up for us. But tell us about your channel and the work you do.
Yes, my channel's name is Rumination, or Umination with Andrew. That's Rumination with Andrew. And I talk about a lot of political, social, cultural, and in some cases, religious commentary. The problem is that YouTube algorithm doesn't allow you to explore all the topics, so I can't. Let me turn this off. So I can't explore all the topics that I would like to explore, so I have to, so let me, sorry about that. Let me turn this thing off. So so but most of what I do is political and social commentaries and cultural commentaries.
But and Andrew, I will say that sometimes you have to use, and I'm sure you're familiar with using a different word to get by or to get around the algorithms. You could probably try looking at that. I think he's frozen a bit.
Okay, there. Yeah. But let's just everybody, it's Rumination with Andrew, and it's in the chat. Those of you on Facebook and on YouTube, the link is put there, and you can share it around with others. I think he is stuck. He's stuck, and if Mr. Tucker is hearing us, and he can, I'm going to ask him to leave and just come back in to give his final words. If you're hearing me, let's see if I could send him a WhatsApp message. Is he better now? Let's see. Okay, it's coming back in. Okay, so let me wait until that happens, and where he could leave and come back in to give us his yes, Vihoy. Folks, I want to use this opportunity that he's trying to get back in. Oh, yes, he's here.
Sorry about that. I was disconnected. I'm sorry about that.
Yes,
so I was saying that, my channel's name is Rumination with Andrew. I do a lot of political, social, and cultural commentaries, and I sometimes touch an aspect of religion because I'm a prophetic. I love prophecy, and sometimes I do that, but the YouTube algorithm doesn't allow me to explore as wide, a gamut of topics that I would like to explore, but mainly political and social commentary.
Well, I tell you something, folks. How many of you would love, we haven't asked him yet, would love for Mr. Tucker to come and do a roadside parliament, a big speech in Barbados? How many of you, give me thumbs up if you would want him to come here and to do that? We haven't asked you yet, but they tell me I draw people into things.
Right.
But the thing is that you can still say yes or no. But I love my people, and Barbadians right now, we need that outside voice. We need that. We need that encouragement. We need that affirmation. We know that we are on the right track. How many of you, let me see the thumbs up, that would say, listen, we would love for him to come in and to speak to the people. Mr. Tucker, we are just regular people. Dr. Ferdinand is here, myself. We come on, and we have some more persons that you haven't met yet. Over time, I hope you will meet them.
Absolutely.
And we are just doing this out of from the bottom of our hearts, just because
Yes.
we love our people. And
Yes.
and so, I think that this kind of stuff we need to be able to be in a free setting that we can talk freely and not be worried about algorithm and all of that, and really do what we call a roadside parliament,
Mm-hmm.
where there is discussion and people come to the mic and they ask questions. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, there is a presentation and then
Mm-hmm.
we ask questions and so on, but people are saying, yes, you don't know, you have affirmed a lot of what we're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm just amazed. It's like he was inside my head. Everything, every single thing there is it's really encouraging to hear a person of your caliber, Andrew, and with your experience, just reaffirm every single thing. I mean, you would have an experience where maybe you might reaffirm one or two things, but to have you reaffirm everything is
Yeah.
really just uncanny, and I really want to thank you for that. Thank you
Yeah,
so
and,
much.
I end here by saying that truth is truth. And I've always said on my program, and where if it's truth is it's truth in Barbados, it's truth in Jamaica, it's truth in Spain, wherever you go, truth is
It's true.
truth.
Yes.
Yes, yes. So we're definitely, need to, we want to revive our roadside parliaments, and after crop over, and I believe that, as we go into September, that we should really look into getting this gentleman here. And if you all are, as somebody said, truth don't spoil.
Yeah, it
Well,
doesn't.
well, on behalf of all of us, Dr. Ferdinand, and myself and Barbados,
Hmm.
and all, we had over 1,000 people at one point watching tonight.
Yes. Yes.
Tomorrow it's going to be go up in the thousands because people get up in the morning and they watch it again. Sir, we want to thank you.
Thank you.
We want to
Thank you.
thank
Yes.
you for
Thank you.
being bold and for being
Yes.
brave, and for speaking truth to power tonight,
Yes.
and speaking truth to us.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we promise you that we are going to make good on what we've heard tonight.
Hmm.
We are going to use what we have heard tonight.
Hmm.
So thank you, thank you, thank you. Somebody said they would listen to you the entire night.
Wow.
Yes, yes,
I
excellent
would
and
I,
on a
I would
praise.
endorse that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you. We
Wonderful.
appreciate it. Yes, very much. And see all the. If you can see the comments, you will see the thumbs up. Can you see the
Yes. And
comments? Yes.
yes, yes,
Well,
yes.
thank you, sir. Thank you, dynamic. Yes,
Well,
yes,
what I must say, and I think I apologize, and I apologize to you, sir, and I apologize to Marcy as well, that Barbadians are really empowering, because I don't know if I would have had such amount of fanfare as I'm getting from Barbadians here in the chat in terms of wanting to hear about these things. And, I think Jamaicans, some of us, yes, but I think the majority don't care about these stuff. They care about the superficial, who is going to win the election, and Vibes Cartel and all the sus and the gossips, but they're not really interested in substantive issues. And I'm happy
Well,
that Barbadians are.
well, I'll tell you one thing that has caused me to change my whole demeanor, Andrew. An old preacher said it to me many years ago, and I didn't understand. I do now. He said, when you have children, it's one thing, but when you
Yes.
have grandchildren, it's another.
Yeah.
And I believe that is what has brought the transition, certainly for me, and brought me to the place where I am thankful to Marcia for the opportunity to host, and
Mhm.
even to co-host with her on the shows.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that very, very much, because I am going to do everything in my power to make sure I leave something that my grandchildren and great grandchildren don't have to deal with and
Yes.
clean up because of our mess. Thank you so very much.
yes, yes.
Thank you.
And I want to say to everybody, please share. Keep sharing this. You've watched it, and
Share
and,
this
and
out.
go ahead and cut it up. If you're an editor and you've seen something on here that you really moved you into action, cut it out and share it around. We don't, listen. This is not for us to keep. Take the information and send it around. to help somebody else. We are devoid of this kind of education in Barbados and this kind of bravery. And so right now, just go ahead and just send it around. So to liberate people, let this be liberating for people, guys. All right.
And I'm thinking, Marcia, that one of these days, I've been thinking about it. I don't know how to do it, but that we need to have a channel that speaks about Caribbean news. Just have a Caribbean news channel where we go through news around and across the Caribbean region and matters that affect us, and also educate our people about each other, because we don't know about each other really.
Yes, we don't. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Okay, guys, July 20th, 2 Sundays from now, Walk Holy presents Pure, which is a soca and social commentary event, and featuring Kidside, the announcer, Blood, Danella, Richard Antonio, the Apache, Sammy Jane, Colin Spencer, Julie, James Leacock, and many more. That's the 20th of July. 4:30 p.m. It's $20, and it's going to be at Praise Academy in Upper Colomorock, right there beside the insurance, Guardian Insurance. It's next door to there, okay? And you know the number, that same number, we'll be able to give you directions. But it's very easy to find, and it's going to be $20, 4:30. 20th of July. As you know, I'm very much associated with the Walk Holy Band. Okay. And so, please come out and support. And remember, we continue our prayer for this nation. And we're going to do it on Sunday, starting at the mall, right there in Sheraton Mall. We're going to start in Sheraton Mall. And because you heard tonight, the battle is spiritual and it is mental.
And mental, yes.
Okay, understand that. You understand? Some of you who say the program is to, and don't, do it in your way. Do it in your way. We're not here trying to convert anybody.
Yep.
I'm not into that. That's not what this show is about. If you come to one of my Praise Academy shows, then that's a different thing. Okay. But this show is not about that. And that's the truth. Okay. But those of you who want to come out to pray, because it's prayer, it's spiritual, and it is mental, this Sunday, 1:30 this Sunday, Sheraton Mall, meet us there. If you don't drive, take a bus and come, and you will we'll pack you in somebody's car. But it is our motorcade and our prayer drive. All right? And let's do that part. All right. Here at the Marcia Week show, Dr. Purdy, it's Emma. Right? We educate, we motivate, we mobilize, and we agitate. All right.
Let me make a note of that, please. You guys are always coming up with these.
Not me. It's Emma. The people. The people came up. We always had that for the 5 years that was our slogan for 5 years, that we educate, motivate, mobilize, and agitate, but never had it in that order to spell a word. And it's Emma. Okay, TMWS, Emma. Right?
Lovely.
Yes. All right, folks. So we will see you, and I hope we're not forgetting anything. If we are,
I can't think of any. You've done the prayer drive. You've done the advertisement there for Praise Academy. I think that's it. Wow.
And the last thing I'll say, and we're going to bring this on the 27th. Those of you again who want to see Praise Academy in full concert, doing Speak Live. The production for which we were, a segment of it for which we were disqualified from NIPCA, will be done at People's Cathedral Church. And Dr. Ferdinand's granddaughter actually is the lead character of the production. And so you need to come out and see that free of cost. That one is free of cost. Bring the children, bring the entire family at People's Cathedral. Thank you all so much for joining us. Dr. Ferdinand, thank you for having me tonight.
Thank me for having you. Thank you for having me on tonight. Oh, Marcia, it was just an absolute joy and thrill to share tonight, really. It has been an educational night. Wow.
Yes, it has been. And somebody, I knew I'm forgetting something. The flea market. And again at Praise Academy. See with us, guys, we got a court case, and so we've got to be doing things, and we have to do fundraising to help ourselves. Okay, so when you see the stuff for Praise Academy, come out and support, please. We have a flea market that is going to be on the 19th as well. We will give more information as we go ahead. Okay, have a good one, everyone. Somebody says good night.
Good night. God bless. Bye bye.
Our destiny, your vote will decide what you want to be. Your vote can foretell our country's fate. One use it well before it's too late. If it is that who you're voting, will be on a doubt. When you're voting, vote them out. Vote them out. If it is they prove it to be only full amount. When you're voting, vote them out. Vote them out. If it is the time is now that change should come about, just as how you vote them in, vote them out. Register and vote them out. If they don't see, vote them out. Stain your finger and vote them out. Show them no mercy, vote them out. Vote them out with total scorn and utter disdain. Let's put our country together again. Put them out of power to be their reign. Let's put our country together again. If for 30 years you voting them in, and there's only tears as soon as they win, they give you big words and enslave your souls, promising you roads and giving potholes. If they are the reason why the economy could sprout, when you're voting, vote them out. Vote them out. If it is the passing laws that them alone can flout, when you're voting, vote them out. Vote them out. If it is the building eyesores, east, west, north and south, the same way you vote them in, vote them out. Register and vote them out. Totally vote them out. State your finger and vote them out. Rescue the country, vote them out. Vote them out with tempo, they have we in vain. Let's put our country together again. Put them out with calypso and joyous refrain. Let's put our country together again. If their policy is a fallacy, bureaucracy, a catastrophe, if they cannot vote and you see him so, then your only hope is for them to vote. If it is fabrication, these statements that they spout, when you're voting, vote them out. Vote them out. If it is that frustration that's make you want to shout, when you're voting, vote them out. Vote them out. Before they misuse out, thief out, sell out and mix out. If it you who vote them in, vote them out. Register and vote them out. All of them, vote them out. Save your finger and vote them out. Them and this Put them out in Scarborough and in Port of Spain. Let's put our country together again. Put them out in Commuter and in Laramie. Let's put our country together again. People must come first, citizens by right. None of we are worse, yellow, black or white. Food, shelter and clothes, free movement and speech. A garden that grows, and one law for each. If it is that injustice is what they always show, when you're voting, vote them out, vote them out. If it is that avarice is all they seem to know, when you're voting, vote them out, vote them out. If it is their politics, it's just a puppy show. When elections day come, all bandits must go. Register and vote them out. If they don't see, stay in your finger and vote them out. Show them no